What if Robert Baratheon found Rhaegar's letter in the Red Keep and marched on Winterfell before Ned could hide the boy? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Robert Baratheon stands in the ruins of the Red Keep's throne room, his warhammer still slick with blood from the battle that ended hours before. The Iron Throne looms before him, twisted and black, no longer occupied by the mad king who once sat there. Aerys lies dead at its foot, slain by the golden-haired boy who now kneels nearby, still wearing his white cloak, despite the kinslaying that has stained it forever. "Your Grace," Sir Jaime Lannister says quietly, his green eyes fixed on the floor. "The keep is yours." He stares at the throne that should be his by right of conquest, but something else burns in his chest, besides triumph. Lyanna is still out there somewhere, held captive by Rhaegar's remaining loyalists. The war may be won, but his sister by marriage remains lost to him, hidden away in some Dornish tower, while her captor rots on the banks of the Trident. "Summon Lord Stark," Robert commands, "and Lord Arryn. Tell them we ride for Dorne at first light." But even as he speaks, Robert knows something is wrong. A restlessness gnaws at him, a sense that victory feels incomplete. He turns away from the throne and stalks through the keep, his boots echoing in the empty halls where Targaryen kings once walked. The Red Keep sprawls before him like a conquered city within a city. Lannister soldiers patrol the corridors now, their crimson cloaks bright against the ancient red stone. They step aside as Robert passes, bowing low to their new king. Yet Robert barely sees them. His mind churns with questions that have no easy answers. Why did Rhaegar leave only 3 Kingsguard at the Tower of Joy? Why not flee across the narrow sea with his father's remaining loyalists? Why make his stand at the Trident when he could have gathered more men, more allies, more time? Robert finds himself climbing the stairs toward what was once the royal apartments. The dragon banners have been torn down, their black silk trampled underfoot by Lannister boots. Tapestries lie in shreds, their golden threads scattered like autumn leaves. But the prince's chambers remain largely untouched, as if Tywin's men had been too busy sacking the lower floors to bother with empty rooms. The door to Rhaegar's solar stands ajar. Robert pushes it open and steps inside. The room still smells faintly of the prince who once lived here. Books line the shelves, their leather bindings cracked with age. A harp rests in one corner, its silver strings catching the late afternoon light that streams through tall windows. Maps cover a wooden table, showing the kingdoms of Westeros marked with colored pins and careful notations in a flowing hand. Robert moves to the desk, his fingers trailing over the polished wood. Here Rhaegar planned his campaigns, wrote his letters, made the choices that led to war. Here the Dragon Prince sat, while Lyanna suffered wherever he had hidden her. A leather satchel lies half-hidden beneath scattered parchments. Robert pulls it free and upends it on the desk. Letters spill out, dozens of them, sealed with various noble houses' sigils. Most bear the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen, but others carry unfamiliar marks. Robert's hands shake as he breaks the seal on the first letter. The parchment crackles as he unfolds it, and Rhaegar's careful script fills his vision. "My beloved Lyanna, the maester tells me you are with child. I can hardly contain my joy at this news. Our son will be born a true prince, legitimate in the eyes of gods and men. The annulment from Elia has been granted by the High Septon, and our marriage in the sight of the old gods makes our union sacred. No man can question his claim." Robert's vision blurs. The words swim on the page as rage builds in his chest like a wildfire. Marriage, annulment, child. The letters burn in his hands as if they were made of dragonfire. He tears open another letter, then another. Each one reveals more of the truth that has been hidden from him. Rhaegar speaks of love, of destiny, of a son who will fulfill ancient prophecies. He writes of the Tower of Joy as if it were some romantic sanctuary rather than a prison where he kept Robert's betrothed. The child quickens within you, and I feel him reaching toward his birthright. When this war ends, we shall raise him to be the prince that was promised, the one who will unite ice and fire. Our blood mingled will heal the wounds of the realm. Robert crumples the parchment in his fist. A child. Rhaegar speaks of a child as if Lyanna had willingly borne him a son, as if she had chosen this fate rather than been stolen away from her true husband. But the worst revelation comes in the final letter, dated only days before the Battle of the Trident. My sweet wife, I ride to meet Robert Baratheon in battle, knowing that our son's future hangs in the balance. If I fall, you must trust in Lord Stark's honor. Ned will protect the boy as he would his own blood. The dragon's line will not die with me, for it lives now in your womb and in the promises I have secured. Tell our son that his father died believing in his destiny. Tell him that kings are not born of force alone, but of love freely given and oaths freely sworn. Robert's hands tremble as he sets the letter down. Ned. The letter speaks of Ned as if he were part of this conspiracy, as if Lyanna's own brother knew of her so-called marriage and approved of it. The pieces fall into place like stones tumbling down a mountain. Rhaegar expected to die. He planned for it, prepared for it, arranged for his precious son to survive even if he did not. And Ned, honorable Ned, who had fought beside Robert throughout this war, was meant to be the boy's protector. Robert looks up from the letters, his eyes scanning the maps on Rhaegar's table. One shows the journey from King's Landing to Winterfell, marked with distances and travel times. Another depicts the Tower of Joy and the surrounding lands of Dorne. Red ink marks possible routes between the two, as if someone had been planning how to move a child safely from south to north without being detected. The rage that fills Robert now is different from the red fury of battle. This is cold and calculating, sharp as a sword blade. He has been played for a fool. While he fought to rescue his stolen bride, she was already wed to another man and bearing his child. While he trusted his closest friend, Ned was conspiring to hide that child from its rightful fate. Robert gathers the letters and stuffs them back into the satchel. His mind races ahead to the implications. If Lyanna is truly dead, as these letters suggest she might be, then somewhere a Targaryen heir still lives. A boy with royal blood and a claim to the throne Robert has just won. A threat to his reign and to any children he might father. More than that, the boy would be a symbol for any who opposed Robert's rule. The dragon's son, hidden away by honorable Ned Stark, growing stronger while Robert's enemies whispered of his legitimacy. The North had bent the knee to end the war, but how long would that last if they knew a truer king lived among them? Robert strides to the window and looks out over King's Landing. Smoke still rises from the lower city, where Tywin's men had been less than gentle with the populace. The Sept of Baelor gleams in the distance, its crystal towers catching the dying light. Somewhere beyond the walls, Ned Stark prepares to ride south to lift the siege of Storm's End. Or so he claims. But Robert knows better now. Ned rides for Dorne, for the Tower of Joy, where Lyanna lies dying or dead. He rides to claim Rhaegar's son and bring him home to Winterfell, where the boy will grow up under the protection of the Wolf Banner and the love of his uncle. Robert cannot allow it. He turns back to the desk and pulls out a piece of fresh parchment. His hand is steady now as he dips a quill in the inkwell and begins to write. The letters form, slowly, carefully, each word chosen for maximum impact. Lord Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell. By royal command, you will return to King's Landing immediately upon receiving this message. Matters of great importance to the realm require your immediate attention. Do not deviate from the King's Road for any purpose. The stability of my reign depends upon your swift compliance. Robert Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals, and the first men, Robert seals the letter with hot wax and presses his signet ring deep into the red blob. The crowned stag looks back at him, antlers sharp and threatening. He calls for a raven master and dispatches the message within the hour. But a single letter will not be enough. If Ned chooses to ignore royal commands in favor of family loyalty, Robert must be prepared to act. He cannot afford to let sentiment cloud his judgment, no matter how much he values Ned's friendship. The throne room feels different when Robert returns to it. The Iron Throne no longer seems like a prize to be claimed, but a responsibility to be defended. Every shadow could hide an assassin. Every smile could mask a traitor. Every friend could shelter an enemy. Robert climbs the iron steps slowly, his boots ringing against the twisted metal. When he settles into the seat that has been denied to him for so long, he feels the sharp edges pressing against his back through his leather jerkin. The throne cuts all who sit upon it, they say. It cut Aerys until madness bled from his wounds. Perhaps it will cut Robert too, but he will bear the pain if it means keeping his crown secure. The Game of Thrones has begun anew, and this time Robert holds all the pieces. He will not lose them to sentiment or the ghost of a dead prince's dreams. As night falls over King's Landing, Robert Baratheon sits alone on the Iron Throne and plans his march to Winterfell. The war may be over, but the real battle has just begun. The bells of King's Landing toll midnight when Robert summons his small council to the Red Keep. The throne room feels different now, lit by dozens of torches that cast dancing shadows against the high walls. The Iron Throne looms behind him, but Robert does not sit upon it. Instead, he paces before the council table like a caged wolf. Rhaegar's letters clutched in his fist. Jon Arryn arrives first, his weathered face grave with concern. The Lord of the Eyrie has served as Robert's surrogate father since boyhood, and his pale eyes search the king's face for answers. Behind him comes Stannis Baratheon, Robert's younger brother, his jaw set in its familiar hard line. Stannis wears the colors of Dragonstone now, black and red, though the dragon's sigil has been torn away and replaced with his crowned stag. Tywin Lannister enters last, his presence filling the room like a golden shadow. The Lord of Casterly Rock moves with the quiet confidence of a man who has just delivered a kingdom to his new king. His green eyes take in the scene with calculating interest, noting Robert's agitation and the letters that tremble in the king's hands. "Your Grace," Jon Arryn says carefully, "you sent for us with great urgency. What matter requires such immediate attention?" Robert stops pacing and turns to face his council. The torchlight catches the fury that burns in his blue eyes. And, for a moment, he looks more like the young lord who had charged across the battlefields of the rebellion than the king who now rules 7 kingdoms. "Rhaegar Targaryen," Robert says, his voice low and dangerous. "The bastard left us a gift before he died." The parchment spreads across the polished wood like fallen leaves, and the 3 lords lean forward to examine them. Jon Arryn picks up one of the letters, his eyes scanning the flowing script with growing alarm. "Secret marriage," Jon murmurs. "Annulment. A child." He looks up at Robert with something like dread in his ancient eyes. "Your Grace, surely this is some deception, some desperate lie meant to—" "It is no lie," Robert cuts him off. I have read every word. Rhaegar wed Lyanna in secret, fathered a child upon her, and made arrangements for that child's protection. The Dragon Prince knew he might die at the Trident, but he planned for his line to continue. Stannis takes another letter and reads it with the methodical precision he brings to everything. His face remains impassive, but his knuckles whiten as he grips the parchment. The dates match the timeline of her abduction. If this is true, then she was with child when she disappeared. And now. Tywin's voice carries the weight of gold and steel. Where is this child now, Your Grace? That is the question, is it not? But I have my suspicions. He points to one particular letter, the one that mentions Ned Stark by name. Read it. Read how the Silver Prince trusted my dearest friend to protect his precious heir. The three lords read in silence, their faces growing grave as the implications become clear. Jon Arryn sets down the letter with shaking hands, while Stannis's jaw works as if he were chewing something bitter. Tywin alone shows no emotion, but his fingers drum against the table in a steady rhythm that speaks of deep thought. Lord Stark rides for Dorne even now. Jon Arryn says slowly. He means to lift the siege at Storm's End, or so he claimed. But if these letters speak true, then he rides for the Tower of Joy. Robert finishes. He rides to claim Rhaegar's bastard and bring him home to Winterfell, where the boy will grow up under northern protection, where he will learn that his father was a prince and his uncle is a king. Stannis sets down his letter and meets his brother's eyes. What would you have us do? The realm is barely at peace. If we move against Lord Stark without proof, we risk losing the North entirely. And if we do nothing, Tywin interjects, his voice smooth as silk, we allow a Targaryen heir to grow to manhood in the very heart of one of our most powerful kingdoms. The boy's mere existence will be a threat to your reign, Your Grace. Every malcontent, every ambitious lord, every enemy of House Baratheon will rally to his banner when he comes of age. Robert slams his fist down on the table, making the letters jump. I will not have another dragon growing strong while I sit idle. I've seen what happens when Targaryens believe in their own prophecies and destinies. Aerys burned men alive, because voices in his head told him to. Rhaegar stole my bride, because he thought their child would save the world. Jon Arryn raises a weathered hand. Your Grace, I beg you to consider this carefully. Lord Stark is your oldest friend. He has fought beside you throughout this war, bled for you, lost his father and brother for you. If you move against him now, based on letters that may be fabrications, they are not fabrications, Robert growls. Look at them, Jon. The ink, the parchment, the seal. These are Rhaegar's own words, written in his own hand. I know his script from the documents we captured after the Trident. Stannis leans forward, his dark eyes intense. Even if the letters are genuine, we have no proof that Lord Stark means to act upon them. Perhaps he rides for Dorne with no knowledge of their contents. Perhaps he means to bring the child to you, rather than hide him away. Tywin's smile is thin and cold. And perhaps pigs will fly, Lord Stannis. No, if these letters speak true, then Lord Stark already knows of the child's existence. Rhaegar trusted him with the secret, which means arrangements were made long before the prince's death. The question is not whether Stark will protect the boy, but how we shall respond when he does. Robert begins pacing again, his boots echoing against the stone floor. The torches flicker in their sconces, casting shifting shadows that dance across the walls, like ghosts of dead dragons. The weight of the crown he has not yet worn properly already presses down upon his shoulders. What do you counsel, my lords? Robert asks, though his tone suggests he has already made up his mind. How does a king deal with threats to his throne? Jon Arryn's voice is heavy with reluctance. Patience, your grace. Send ravens to Lord Stark. Summon him back to King's Landing. Question him directly about these matters. If he speaks truly and surrenders the child willingly, then perhaps mercy might be the wiser course. Stannis nods slowly. Investigation before action. We must know the full truth before we commit ourselves to any course that cannot be undone. The North is vast and strong. If Lord Stark turns against us, he could hold Winterfell for years. But Tywin shakes his golden head. Forgive me, my lords, but such counsel is the path to weakness. Threats to the crown must be met with strength, not patience. Every day we delay allows Lord Stark to secure his position, to rally the northern lords to his cause, to prepare defenses against royal justice. Robert stops pacing and fixes his gaze on the Lord of Casterly Rock. What would you have me do, Lord Tywin? Tywin's green eyes gleam in the torchlight. Strike quickly, your grace. March north with overwhelming force. Present Lord Stark with a choice. Surrender the Targaryen bastard, willingly, or face the consequences of harboring a pretender. The northern lords will not risk their own land to protect another man's secret, especially one that threatens the peace of the realm. Jon Arryn's face pales. You speak of civil war, Lord Tywin. The realm has barely recovered from one conflict. Would you begin another before the corpses of the first have even cooled? I speak of preventing civil war, Tywin counters smoothly. Every moment that child draws breath is a moment closer to another rebellion. Better to end the threat now, while it remains small and manageable, than to wait until it grows beyond our power to contain. Robert looks between his advisers, weighing their words against the rage that burns in his chest. The letters on the table seem to mock him with their careful script and royal seals. Even in death, Rhaegar continues to torment him, continues to steal what should be his by right. I have already sent a raven to Lord Stark, Robert says finally. I commanded him to return to King's Landing immediately, without deviation from the King's Road, but I suspect he will not obey. Loyalty to family runs deeper than loyalty to kings in the north. Stannis frowns, and if he does not obey, what then? Robert's smile is hard as winter iron. Then we ride north, brother. We ride with enough men to ensure that the north remembers why they knelt to House Baratheon in the first place. Jon Arryn shakes his head sadly. Your grace, I fear this course will cost more than it gains. The realm needs healing, not fresh wounds. But Robert has made his choice. The boy king who had once dreamed of glory and tournament victories is gone, replaced by something harder and more ruthless. The Iron Throne demands such sacrifices, and Robert finds he is willing to pay them. Send ravens to all the great houses, Robert commands. Tell them their king requires a royal progress to the north. Tell them we ride to cement the peace and receive the homage of our northern subjects. Let them bring their full levies as honor guards for their new king. Tywin nods approvingly. A wise precaution, your grace. The great houses will compete to show their loyalty through the size of their escorts. You will have an army worthy of a conqueror before you ever leave the Riverlands. Robert gathers up Rhaegar's letters and tucks them inside his doublet, close to his heart where they burn like coals against his chest. The game has begun in earnest now, and he will play it to win, no matter the cost to old friendships or new kingdoms. As the small council disperses into the pre-dawn darkness, Robert remains alone in the throne room. The Iron Throne waits for him, its twisted metal edges gleaming in the dying torchlight. He climbs the steps slowly and settles into the seat of kings, feeling the sharp points press against his back. The throne cuts all who sit upon it, but tonight Robert welcomes the pain. It reminds him that ruling requires sacrifice, that even kings must bleed for their crowns. Somewhere in the darkness, Ned Stark rides south with secrets that could destroy everything Robert has fought to build. But Robert Baratheon has not come this far to lose his throne to a dead prince's dreams and a bastard's claim. The dragon is dead, and Robert means to keep it that way, no matter how much honor he must sacrifice in the process. Dawn breaks grey and cold over King's Landing as Robert Baratheon rides out through the Dragon Gate. Behind him stretches a host that would make the Conqueror himself take notice. Lannister crimson mingles with Baratheon gold, while banners of a dozen great houses snap in the morning wind. Tywin rides at the king's right hand, his golden armor gleaming like the sun itself, while Stannis maintains his position on the left in the black and red of Dragonstone. The column stretches for miles along the King's Road, 20,000 men marching north under the pretense of royal progress. Knights and men-at-arms, crossbowmen and mounted sergeants, all moving with the urgency of a king who will not be kept waiting. Robert sets a punishing pace from the first hour, pushing both man and horse harder than any ceremonial journey would require. "Your Grace," Tywin says as they crest a hill overlooking the Blackwater Rush, "at this pace we'll reach the twins within a fortnight. Perhaps we should consider—" "We push on," Robert cuts him off, his voice hard as hammered steel. "Every hour we delay gives Stark more time to disappear into the vastness of the north. I'll not lose him to snow and forest." Behind them, the great lords of the realm struggle to match their king's determination. Lord Mace Tyrell sweats profusely despite the cool morning air, while his bannermen eye the pace with growing concern. The river lords who have joined the royal progress whisper among themselves about the urgency that drives their new king north with such force. Meanwhile, 500 miles to the south, Eddard Stark cradles a different kind of burden as his small party makes its way through the red mountains of Dawn. The babe in his arms sleeps fitfully, tiny fists clenched as if already fighting the world that awaits him. Jon Snow, Ned calls him in his mind, though the name sits heavy on his tongue like a lie that must be told for the sake of truth. The child's hair catches the southern sunlight, revealing strands of silver gold that mark him as surely as any royal seal. His eyes, when they open, are the deep violet of Targaryen kings, but Ned sees Lyanna in the shape of his face and the stubborn set of his jaw. This boy will grow tall and strong like a Stark, but the dragon blood flows in his veins whether he knows it or not. "My lord," Howland Reed says quietly, his voice barely carrying over the sound of hooves on stone. "We should consider our route more carefully. Word of your presence in Dawn will spread, and men will wonder why the Lord of Winterfell travels with a newborn child." The same thought has plagued him since they left the Tower of Joy, leaving behind the graves of good men who died for a prince's dream. Arthur Dayne, Gerald Hightower, Oswell Went, all dead now, their watch ended with their prince's line. Only Ned and Howland survived that final battle, and they carry secrets that could shatter the Seven Kingdoms. "We stop at Starfall," Ned decides. "I must return Dawn to House Dayne, and we can resupply there before the long journey north." The mention of Arthur Dayne's sword brings silence to their small group. The Sword of the Morning had fought like a man possessed in those final moments, his blade shining with its own inner light as he held the tower against 7 good men of the north. In the end, it had taken Howland Reed's intervention to bring down the knight they called the finest sword in all the 7 kingdoms. Back on the King's Road, Robert drives his host through the fertile lands of the Crownlands like a storm given flesh. Villages and holdfasts blur past as the royal column advances, their banners streaming behind them like the wings of some great bird of prey. Ravens fly ahead of them, carrying word to lords and small folk alike that their king approaches with the might of the realm at his back. At Harrenhal, they pause only long enough to water the horses and take on supplies. The great castle broods over the shores of the God's Eye, its twisted towers reaching toward the sky, like the fingers of dead gods. Robert stares up at those melted stones and remembers the tourney where it all began, where Rhaegar crowned Lyanna his queen of love and beauty before the assembled nobility of Westeros. Harrenhal has seen enough of royal visits, Stannis observes, his dark eyes fixed on the massive gatehouse. Perhaps we should ride around it rather than through it. Robert shakes his head. No, let them see their king. Let them remember that House Baratheon holds the throne now, not the dragons who built this cursed place. They ride through Harrenhal's great gates as the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the yard. The few inhabitants who remain bow low as Robert passes, but their eyes follow him with the wariness of those who have seen too much of royal favor and royal wrath. Children peer from behind their mothers' skirts, staring at the golden stag that flies above their heads, where once the three-headed dragon held sway. Meanwhile, at Starfall, Ned Stark stands before the seat of House Dane, with dawn heavy in his hands. The pale stone castle rises from the cliffs like something carved from sea foam, its towers gleaming white against the azure sky. Here Arthur Dane was born, and here his sister Ashara once danced with Brandon Stark before everything went wrong. Lady Dane receives him in her solar, her violet eyes red with recent tears. She knows why he has come, knows what the wrapped bundle in his arms means for her family's honor. The Sword of the Morning is dead, and with him dies a legend that stretched back to the Age of Heroes. He fought with honor, Ned tells her, placing Dawn across her lap with reverent care. Even at the end, he was everything the songs claimed. Lady Dane nods, her fingers tracing the star-carved pommel of her brother's sword. And the child, what will become of him? Ned's jaw tightens. He is my bastard son, nothing more, nothing less. The world need not know otherwise. She studies him, with eyes that have seen too much sorrow. The world has a way of revealing its secrets, Lord Stark. Some truths are too large to hide forever. But Ned has made his choice, sworn his oath to a dying sister whose blood still stains his dreams. He will carry this burden to his grave if need be. Will let the realm think him faithless if it means keeping Jon safe from those who would see dragon blood spilled. The royal progress reaches the twins as the sun sets blood-red over the green fork. Lord Walder Frey greets his king with the appropriate ceremony, though his ancient eyes glitter with curiosity about this sudden royal journey. The late Lord Frey has survived too many kings to be impressed by pageantry, but even he cannot hide his interest in why Robert Baratheon travels north with such a substantial host. Your Grace, Frey croaks as they feast in his great hall. Might an old man ask what brings the king so far from his new throne? The north is a cold and distant land for a royal progress. Robert tears into a joint of beef with his bare hands, grease running down his chin as he considers his answer. Round him, the great lords of the realm lean forward to hear their king's words, while Frey's numerous sons and grandsons watch from the lower tables. The North bent the knee to end the war, Robert says finally. But a wise king ensures that loyalty is remembered and rewarded. Lord Stark has served the realm well, and I would see Winterfell with my own eyes. The words sound reasonable enough, but those who know Robert best catch the steel beneath the courtesy. Stannis shifts uncomfortably in his seat, while Tywin's green eyes narrow with calculation. The assembled lords nod and murmur approval. But more than one wonders why such a journey requires 20,000 swords. Meanwhile, Ned's small party crosses the Dornish marches under cover of darkness. They avoid the great roads now, taking shepherd's paths and forgotten tracks through the mountains. The baby grows fretful as they climb higher, his cries echoing off the stone walls of ancient gorges. Each sound makes Ned's heart race with fear that they will be discovered, that some patrol or hunting party will find them and ask questions that have no good answers. "My lord," Howland Reed whispers as they pause to rest their horses. "A raven came to us at dawn from King's Landing." Ned takes the message with trembling fingers, breaking the royal seal with careful movements. The parchment crackles in the mountain wind as he reads Robert's command to return to the capital immediately. The words are formal, even cold, nothing like the warmth that should exist between old friends and brothers-in-arms. He knows. Ned breathes, his face going pale in the moonlight. Somehow he knows. Howland moves closer, his voice urgent. "What will you do? If you return to King's Landing now..." Ned looks down at the child, sleeping in the crook of his arm. Jon's face is peaceful in sleep, innocent of the storms that swirl around his royal blood. In a few years, he will look more like Lyanna, and the resemblance will grow stronger with each passing season. But, for now, he is just a babe who needs protection from a world that would see him dead for the crime of his father's name. "We ride for Winterfell," Ned decides, stuffing the royal command inside his cloak. "And we ride hard. If Robert wants answers, he can find them in the north." The race is on now, though only one side knows they are running. Robert pushes his great host through the riverlands like a man possessed, while Ned flees through the night toward the safety of his father's castle. Between them stretch hundreds of miles of road and river, forest and field, all of it pregnant with the promise of conflict. Ravens fly between them, carrying messages that grow darker with each passing day. Robert's commands become threats, while Ned's silence speaks louder than any words. The realm holds its breath as king and lord hurtle toward a confrontation that will reshape the Seven Kingdoms. At Riverrun, the royal progress gains new followers as Lord Hoster Tully adds his banners to the growing host. The Riverlords know the importance of backing the winning side, and 20,000 swords make Robert's position clear enough. But even as they march beneath the royal banners, some whisper about the haste that drives their king north, like a man fleeing demons. Ned reaches the neck as the first snows begin to fall. The Crannogmen know every path through the marshlands, every hidden way through reed and mud. Here they can disappear completely, vanish into the green depths where no royal host can follow. But Ned does not stop, does not seek shelter in the ancient strongholds of House Reed. Winterfell calls to him, like a voice from childhood, promising sanctuary behind its grey walls. The child grows stronger with each passing day, his violet eyes bright with interest as he watches the world pass by. He has Lyanna's spirit already, Ned thinks, the same fire that drove her to crown Rhaegar at the tourney, the same stubborn will that led her to die for love rather than live for duty. As the royal host crosses into the Riverlands proper, Robert receives word that Lord Stark has not been seen on the King's Road. No inn or holdfast reports his passage. No patrol has spotted his banners. Either Ned travels in secret, or he has chosen a different path entirely. He runs. Robert tells his small council as they make camp beside the rushing waters of the Red Fork. Just as I knew he would. Then we have him, Your Grace. A man who runs is a man with something to hide. When we reach Winterfell, none can question your right to demand answers. But Stannis looks troubled, his dark eyes fixed on the northern horizon. And if he refuses to answer, if he claims the rights of a lord paramount in his own castle, Robert's smile is sharp as a blade. Then he will learn that kin's rights trump lord's rights. Even in the north, the realm will not be divided by sentiment or the memory of dead princes. The race continues through the lengthening nights. Two men who once loved each other as brothers, now hurtling toward a confrontation that will leave only one standing behind them. The realm watches and waits, sensing that the real war for the Iron Throne has only just begun. The ravens come to Winterfell in the grey hour before dawn, their black wings cutting through the autumn air like harbingers of change. Catelyn Stark stands at her solar window, watching the birds circle the great castle's towers before settling in the rookery. She has been awake since before first light, her sleep troubled by dreams she cannot quite remember, and a restlessness that grows stronger with each passing day. Maester Luwin climbs the stairs to her chambers with unusual haste, his grey robes rustling as he moves. The old man's face bears the weight of troubling news, and Catelyn feels her heart quicken as she sees the messages clutched in his weathered hands. "My lady," Luwin says, his voice carefully controlled. "Word has come from King's Landing, and from the Riverlands as well." Catelyn takes the scrolls with fingers that tremble slightly. The first bears the royal seal of House Baratheon, still unfamiliar after so many years of Targaryen dragons. The second carries her father's mark, the silver trout of Riverrun swimming through familiar blue wax. She reads the royal message first, her eyes scanning the formal phrases that announce King Robert's intention to honor the North with a royal progress. The words speak of ceremony and celebration, of a king's desire to see the lands that fought so valiantly for his cause. But between the lines, Catelyn reads something else entirely. 20,000 men, she murmurs, looking up at Luwin. He brings 20,000 men for a ceremonial visit? That is no progress, my lady. That is an army. Catelyn opens her father's letter with growing dread. Lord Hoster Tully writes of the king's passage through the Riverlands, of the urgency that drives the royal host north with unprecedented speed. He speaks of tension in the royal party, of whispered conversations and dark looks exchanged between the great lords who ride with their king. He asks about Lord Stark, Luwin observes, reading over her shoulder. Your lord father wonders when Ned will return from lifting the siege at Storm's End. But Catelyn knows that particular siege ended weeks ago. The ravens from Storm's End itself confirmed Robert's victory, the surrender of the Reach Lords, the bending of proud knees before the new king's authority. If Ned had gone to lift that siege, he should have returned to Winterfell by now, should have sent word of his success and his homecoming. Where is he? Catelyn asks, though she expects no answer. Where has Ned gone, and why does the king march north with an army to find him? She moves to her writing desk, her mind already working through the implications. Whatever has happened in the south, whatever has driven King Robert from his new throne to seek out her husband, Winterfell must be ready. The great castle has weathered storms before, has stood against kings and rebels, ice and fire. It will not fall to unpreparedness now. Send word to the village, she commands. Tell them to prepare for a royal visit. We'll need provisions for 20,000 men, fodder for their horses, space in the winter town for those who cannot be housed within the castle walls. Luwin nods and makes notes on his parchment. And the household, my lady. Shall I summon the other northern lords? If Robert comes in peace, then gathering an armed host might seem like preparation for war. But if he comes with darker purposes, then isolation could prove fatal. The balance between courtesy and caution weighs heavy on her shoulders. Send ravens to our bannermen, she decides. Tell them their king approaches, and their liege lord would welcome their attendance at Winterfell. Make it sound like an invitation, not a summons. As Luwin hurries away to dispatch her messages, Catelyn remains at her window, staring out at the vast expanse of the north. Somewhere beyond the horizon, her husband travels roads she cannot see, carrying secrets she cannot guess. And from the south comes a king with an army at his back, seeking answers to questions she does not understand. The morning brings a flurry of activity as Winterfell prepares for royal guests. The great hall echoes with the sounds of servants scrubbing floors and hanging fresh rushes. In the kitchens, the cooks calculate how many cattle must be slaughtered, how many barrels of ale must be brought up from the deep cellars. The stable boys clear stalls and mend harnesses, preparing for the greatest influx of horses the castle has seen since the war began. Catelyn walks through it all like a woman in a dream, her hand resting unconsciously on her still flat belly. The child growing within her makes itself known in subtle ways. A queasiness in the morning, a tiredness that comes without warning, a heightening of all her senses that makes the castle's usual smells more noticeable. She has not yet told anyone of her pregnancy, not even Ned in her letters. Some instinct warns her to keep this secret close until she better understands what storms approach her family. Young Robb follows at her heels as she makes her rounds, his dark hair falling across his eyes in the way that always reminds her so strongly of Ned. At 2 years old, he possesses his father's serious nature already, watching the world with grey eyes that seem older than his years. He senses the tension in the castle, even if he cannot understand its source. "Where, Papa?" he asks, tugging at her skirts as they pass through the armory. "Papa, come home." Catelyn kneels down to his level, smoothing his unruly hair with gentle fingers. "Soon, my sweet boy. Papa will come home soon." But even as she speaks the words, doubt gnaws at her heart. If Ned was simply delayed by weather or road conditions, he would have sent word. The silence from the south grows more ominous with each passing day. Ser Rodrik Cassel finds her in the Godswood that afternoon, his white whiskers bristling with concern. The Master-at-Arms has served House Stark since before Catelyn's marriage, and his weathered face bears the weight of long experience. "My lady," he says, his voice low enough that the servants hanging laundry nearby cannot overhear. "I've spoken with the guards, the stable boys, everyone who might have word of Lord Stark's movements. None have seen hide nor hair of him on the King's Road." Catelyn nods, having expected as much. "And the King's party, moving fast by all accounts, faster than any ceremonial progress should. They'll be at our gates within a se'nnight, perhaps sooner, if they continue at their current pace." She studies the heart tree that stands at the center of the Godswood, its ancient face carved with sorrows older than memory. The red leaves rustle in the autumn wind, and for a moment she imagines she can hear whispers in their movement, warnings carried on the northern air. Double the guard, she decides, quietly, without making it seem like we expect trouble, and send word to White Harbor. Lord Manderley should know that his king approaches the north. Sir Rodrik tugs at his whiskers. "And if the king asks about Lord Stark's whereabouts, what should we tell him?" Catelyn has been wrestling with this question all day. The truth is that she does not know where Ned has gone, only that he has not returned from a war that ended weeks ago. But admitting ignorance of her own husband's movements will make her seem either foolish or complicit in some deception. "We tell him that Lord Stark serves the realm's needs," she says finally. "That he will return to Winterfell when his duties permit." The sort of courtly evasion that might buy time but will not satisfy a king's demands for truth. Yet, until she knows more about why Robert comes north with such urgency, she dare not reveal what little she actually knows. The afternoon brings more ravens, more messages that deepen the mystery. Word comes from the twins that the royal party paused there only briefly, taking on supplies before continuing north at their punishing pace. Lord Walder Frey's letter speaks of tension in the king's party, of harsh words exchanged between the great lords who ride with Robert. Another message arrives from Moat Cailin, where the ancient fortress guards the narrow causeway between the north and the southern kingdoms. The garrison reports no sign of Lord Stark or his party, no banners bearing the grey direwolf passing through their territory. If Ned travels home, he has not taken the most direct route. As evening falls, Catelyn stands once again at her solar window, watching the lights of the winter town flicker to life below the castle walls. The settlement sprawls across the hillside like a constellation of earthbound stars, home to craftsmen and traders, innkeepers and stable boys. Soon, those simple folk will find their quiet lives disrupted by the presence of 20,000 men and a king whose purposes remain hidden. A soft knock at her door interrupts her brooding. Old Nan enters with Rob at her side, the ancient woman moving with the careful steps of one whose bones remember too many winters. "Time for the young lord's sleep, my lady," Nan says, her voice creaky as old leather, though he's been asking for his papa all day long. Catelyn takes her son into her arms, feeling the solid weight of him against her chest. Rob's dark hair smells of soap and sunshine, and his grey eyes search her face for reassurance she is not certain she can provide. "Tell me about the dragons," Rob demands, as he has every night since learning the war is over. "Tell about Papa fighting dragons." Old Nan settles into her chair by the fire, her gnarled hands working steadily on her knitting. "Dragons are gone now, little lord. Your papa and the king sent them all away." But as Catelyn listens to the familiar story, she wonders if the dragons are truly gone, or if they have simply changed their form. The tension that drives King Robert north, the silence that shrouds her husband's movements, the armies that march under the guise of ceremony. These too are dragons of a sort, invisible, but no less dangerous for their lack of wings and fire. When Rob finally sleeps, curled against her side like a puppy seeking warmth, Catelyn allows herself to acknowledge the fear that has been growing in her chest all day. Something is wrong. Something that goes deeper than delayed homecomings or unexpected royal visits. The realm may have won its war, but peace feels as fragile as ice on a pond, ready to crack at the first wrong step. She thinks of the child growing within her, still too small to quicken, but already precious beyond words. Will this babe be born into a world at peace, or will the dragons return before its first breath? Will Ned be there to hold his son or daughter? Or will duty call him away to fight battles that should have ended with Robert's crown? Outside her window, the north spreads endless and eternal, a land of snow and stone, honor and endurance. Whatever storms approach, Winterfell will endure as it always has. But the price of that endurance grows higher with each raven's message, each day of silence from the man whose duty should have brought him home by now. Catelyn Stark settles back against her pillows, one hand on her sleeping son and the other resting protectively over the new life she carries. Tomorrow will bring fresh challenges, new questions that demand answers she does not possess. But tonight, in the safety of her solar, she allows herself to hope that when the king's army reaches Winterfell's gates, they will find only a loyal lord's family waiting to offer the hospitality of the north. The wind howls around the castle's ancient stones, carrying with it the promise of winter and the whisper of changes yet to come. The grey walls of Winterfell rise from the northern landscape like the bones of some ancient giant, And Ned Stark has never been more grateful to see his father's castle. His small party approaches through the Hunter's Gate as the sun sets behind them. Their horses weary from the desperate ride north. In Ned's arms, the babe sleeps fitfully, wrapped in furs that bear no sigil, no mark that might reveal his dangerous heritage. The guards at the gate recognize their lord immediately, despite the weeks of hard travel that have carved lines into his young face. They bow as he passes, but Ned sees the questions in their eyes, the curiosity about the child he carries, and the urgency that brought him home ahead of any Raven's message. "Send word to Lady Stark," Ned commands as he dismounts in the yard. "Tell her I have returned, and that I must speak with her immediately, privately." The great hall of Winterfell echoes with the sounds of evening preparations when Ned enters, his boots ringing against the ancient stones. Servants bow and murmur greetings, but he barely acknowledges them. His mind focuses entirely on the bundle in his arms and the impossible conversation that awaits him. Catelyn meets him at the foot of the stairs leading to their chambers, her face lighting with relief, before darkening with confusion. She has grown more beautiful in the months of his absence, pregnancy adding a glow to her features despite the early hour. Behind her stands young Robb, barely able to contain his excitement at his father's return. "Ned," she breathes, moving toward him with arms outstretched. But she stops when she sees the infant, her blue eyes widening as she takes in the silver-gold hair that catches the torchlight. Whose child is that? The question hangs in the air between them, like a blade. Ned looks down at his wife, at the woman he has grown to love despite the political nature of their marriage, and prepares to break her heart with necessary lies. "He is mine," Ned says quietly. "My blood, born of a woman I knew during the war." Catelyn's face goes pale, then flushed with anger and hurt that cuts deeper than any sword. She takes a step backward, her hand instinctively moving to her own belly where their second child grows. "Yours," she repeats, her voice barely above a whisper. "You bring your bastard home to me, to our children, and expect me to welcome him." Robb tugs at his mother's skirts, confused by the tension that fills the air. "Papa home," he says, reaching toward Ned with small arms. "Papa, up." Ned kneels down and embraces his son with his free arm, breathing in the familiar scent of Robb's hair. When he stands, his grey eyes meet Catelyn's with a desperation she has never seen before. "Cat, please, let us speak privately. There are things I must tell you, things that affect not just our family, but the realm itself." Something in his tone, some note of genuine fear, penetrates her anger. She studies his face more carefully, noting the lines of exhaustion, the haunted look that speaks of terrible choices made in dark places. "Very well," she says, her voice still cold but controlled. "Robb, go with old Nan. Your father and I must talk." Ned settles into his chair beside the fire, still holding the infant who has begun to stir and fuss. Catelyn sits across from him, her back straight and her hands folded in her lap like a queen receiving petitioners. "His name is John," Ned begins, his voice carefully steady. "And you are right to be angry with me, Cat, but please, hear me out before you judge too harshly." He tells her a version of the truth, one crafted during the long ride north. He speaks of Lyanna's death, of finding her in a tower in Dawn, of the promise he made to her as she lay dying. He tells her of a child born of love and fear, of a sister's plea to protect an innocent life from those who would see it ended. "She made me swear," Ned says, his voice breaking slightly. "Made me promise that I would keep him safe, no matter the cost to my own honor." Catelyn listens in silence, her face giving away nothing of her thoughts. When he finishes, she sits quietly for a long moment, studying the child who sleeps in his arms. The infant's features are still soft and undefined, but already she can see that he will be beautiful, with the otherworldly look that marks those of royal blood. Lyanna's child, she says finally. Not just yours, but hers as well. I could not tell you the truth in a letter, could not risk such knowledge falling into the wrong hands. But now King Robert comes north with an army. Catelyn finishes. And you fear he knows. The surprise in Ned's face confirms what she has already suspected. He looks up at her with something like wonder, seeing for the first time the woman who has grown from the scared girl he married into someone capable of reading the currents of politics and power. How did you know about Robert? Ravens, she says simply. Messages from my father, from the garrisons along the King's Road. 20,000 men ride toward Winterfell under the banner of royal progress. That is not ceremony, Ned. That is conquest. Ned shifts the baby to one arm and reaches for her hand with the other. Cat, I need your help. More than that, I need your forgiveness. What I ask of you goes against everything a wife should be expected to bear. She looks down at their joined hands, at the calluses that mark him as a man who lives by his sword. When she speaks, her voice is steady despite the pain that fills her eyes. You ask me to claim your sister's child as your bastard, to let the world think you faithless, while you protect a boy whose very existence could bring down kingdoms. Yes, Ned whispers. That is exactly what I ask. Catelyn pulls her hand free and moves to the window, staring out at the torches that burn along Winterfell's walls. The night sky stretches endless above them, scattered with stars that have watched over this castle since the Age of Heroes. And if I refuse? If I tell you to find another solution, another family to raise this child? Ned's voice is quiet, but firm. Then I will do what honor demands, even if it costs me everything. I gave my word to a dying woman. Cat, I cannot break that oath, not even for you. She turns back to face him, and he sees something new in her expression. Not acceptance, perhaps, but understanding. The girl who married him for duty has become a woman who recognizes the weight of oaths and obligations. Show me the child, she says. Ned unwraps the furs carefully, revealing the sleeping infant within. Jon stirs at the cool air, his violet eyes opening to fix on Catelyn's face with the unfocused stare of the newborn. Despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal, she feels her heart soften at the sight of him. He has her look about the eyes. She observes quietly. Your sister's eyes, not yours. We must pray that Robert sees only what he expects to see, another bastard in a world full of them. Catelyn reaches out tentatively, letting Jon's tiny fingers wrap around her own. His grip is surprisingly strong, and when he looks at her, she imagines she sees something of Lyanna's spirit already burning there. If we do this, she says slowly, if we claim him as yours, then he becomes our burden forever, our secret, our danger, our responsibility. I know what I ask of you, Ned replies, and I know I have no right to ask it. But Cat, if Robert discovers the truth, he will kill the child, she finishes, and probably you as well, for harboring a Targaryen heir. The words hang heavy between them, the brutal reality of their situation laid bare. Outside their window, Winterfell prepares for sleep, unaware that the choices made in this solar will shape the fate of kingdoms. Very well, Catelyn says finally. Jon Snow he shall be, bastard son of Eddard Stark. But Ned, if we do this, we do it completely. No half measures, no moments of weakness. The lie must be perfect, or it will destroy us all. Relief floods Ned's features, followed quickly by something like shame. You are better than I deserve, Cat. Kinder than I have any right to expect. She moves back to his side, settling into the chair beside him. When she speaks, her voice carries the steel that lies beneath Tully courtesy. Do not mistake necessity for kindness, husband. I do this for you, and for Rob, and for the child I carry, not because I forgive your betrayal, but because I understand the consequences of the alternative. Ned nods, accepting the rebuke as his due. What must we do? How do we prepare for Robert's arrival? Catelyn's mind is already working, considering the practical aspects of the deception they must maintain. First, we need a wet nurse. The child cannot be fed by servants who might talk. Find someone trustworthy, someone whose loyalty is absolute. And then we prepare your story. Where did you meet this woman? How long was the affair? Why bring the child to Winterfell now, instead of leaving him with his mother? Every detail must be consistent, believable. Ned shifts Jon to his shoulder, patting the infant's back with practiced ease. I thought, perhaps during the siege of Gulltown, a fisherman's daughter died in childbed. Simple, tragic, the sort of thing that happens in war. Catelyn nods approvingly. Good. Sad enough to discourage questions, common enough to seem realistic. But Ned, there is another problem we must address. What? She gestures toward the baby, whose violet eyes have begun to close again, as sleep reclaims him. Those eyes, Robert, may be many things, but he is not stupid. If he looks closely at this child, I know, Ned admits. In time, they may darken. Some children's eyes change as they grow. We must hope, and we must be careful about how much Robert sees of him. Maester Luwin enters at Catelyn's invitation, his grey robes rustling as he approaches. The old man's eyes widen when he sees the infant in Ned's arms. My lord, Luwin says carefully, I was not aware that you had returned with additional family. Ned and Catelyn exchange a look, their first test arriving sooner than expected. Catelyn speaks first, her voice steady and controlled. My husband has brought home a bastard child, Maester. The boy will be raised at Winterfell, as befits his station. Quote, Luwin's weathered face reveals nothing, but his eyes are sharp as he studies the baby. Of course, my lady. Shall I prepare appropriate accommodations? Yes, Ned replies. And Luwin, discretion in this matter would be appreciated. The Maester bows. Naturally, my lord. However, there are more immediate concerns. Ravens have arrived throughout the day. The northern lords respond to Lady Stark's summons. Many are already riding for Winterfell. Catelyn nods. Good. We will need their presence when the king arrives. There is something else, Luwin continues, producing a scroll from his robes. This came by Raven from the King's Road. The royal party will be here within 3 days, possibly sooner. 3 days to prepare, 3 days to make their deception perfect, 3 days to ready arguments that might convince a king to spare a child's life. Send ravens to our most trusted bannermen, he commands. Tell them their lord has urgent need of their counsel. Tell them the future of the North may depend on their swift arrival. Luwin hurries away to dispatch the messages. Ned and Catelyn sit in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The infant sleeps peacefully between them, unaware that his young life hangs in the balance of loyalties and lies. What will you tell Robert? Catelyn asks eventually. Ned stares into the fire, watching the flames dance among the logs. The truth, as much of it as I dare. that I found a child who needed protection, that I gave my word to keep him safe. I will appeal to whatever mercy remains in Robert's heart. And if mercy is not enough, Ned's hand moves instinctively to the pommel of ice, the great Valyrian steel sword of House Stark. Then I will do what honor demands, whatever the cost. Outside their window, the first snows of autumn begin to fall, dusting Winterfell's ancient stones with white. Winter is coming, as it always does, but this winter brings more than cold. It brings a reckoning that will test the bonds of friendship, family, and duty in ways none of them can yet imagine. The sound of 20,000 men on the march reaches Winterfell, long before the royal banners come into view. The earth trembles beneath the weight of horses and boots, while dust rises like a brown storm on the horizon. From the highest tower of the castle, Ned Stark watches his king approach and feels his heart grow cold with dread. The royal party crests the final hill as the sun reaches its zenith, and the sight takes Ned's breath away. Golden banners stream in the wind, beside crimson and black, while the crowned stag of House Baratheon flies supreme above them all. Knights in gleaming armor ride alongside men-at-arms whose weapons catch the northern light like fallen stars. At the head of this host rides Robert Baratheon, no longer the laughing young lord who had fought beside Ned throughout the rebellion. The crown sits heavy on his dark hair, and his blue eyes survey Winterfell with the calculating gaze of a king who has learned to trust no one completely. Beside him, Tywin Lannister sits his destrier like a golden statue, while Stannis Baratheon maintains his position with the rigid posture of duty personified. "My lord," Sir Roderick says quietly, appearing at Ned's shoulder. The men are in position. The northern lords await your command in the great hall. And Ned nods, without taking his eyes from the approaching host. In the courtyard below, he can see Catelyn emerging from the keep with young Robb at her side. She wears her finest gown, deep blue wool trimmed with silver, and her auburn hair is braided with ribbons that mark her as the Lady of Winterfell. To any observer, she appears the perfect picture of a loyal lord's wife preparing to welcome her king. "And Jon?" Ned asks. "Safe in the nursery with a wet nurse, as you commanded. The woman is trustworthy. Her family has served House Stark for 3 generations. Ned allows himself a moment of relief before descending the tower steps. The next few hours will determine whether his desperate gamble succeeds, or whether everything he holds dear burns in the fire of royal wrath. The great gates of Winterfell swing open as the royal party approaches, and Ned takes his place in the courtyard with his household arrayed behind him. The northern lords who answered his summons stand in careful formation. Lord Karstark with his sunburst banner, the great Jon Umber, whose massive frame towers over his companions. Lord Manderley, whose white horse prances nervously beneath him. Their presence provides some comfort, but Ned knows that 20,000 royal swords will outweigh any northern support if matters turn violent. Robert dismounts from his destrier with the fluid motion of a man born to war, his black hair catching the autumn sunlight. He wears mail beneath a surcoat bearing the crowned stag, and Ned notices that his hammer hangs ready at his side despite the peaceful nature of this supposed visit. "Your Grace," Ned says, kneeling on the ancient stones of his family's castle. Winterfell welcomes its king. Around him, the assembled Northmen bend the knee in unison, their heads bowed in submission to royal authority. But Ned feels the tension in their posture, the wariness of wolves forced to show their throats to a stranger's blade. Robert's response comes a heartbeat too late, and when it does, his voice carries none of the warmth that should exist between old friends. "Lord Stark," Rise, all of you. We come to honor the North's service to the realm. The words are correct, but the tone sends ice through Ned's veins. This is not Robert the companion of his youth, but Robert the king, armed with suspicion and surrounded by 20,000 reasons to demand obedience. Tywin Lannister dismounts with careful precision, his green eyes taking in every detail of Winterfell's defenses, every face in the assembled crowd. When his gaze meets Ned's, something cold passes between them, the recognition of adversaries who have not yet begun to fight. "The great hall has been prepared for your grace's pleasure," Catelyn says, stepping forward with Rob's small hand clutched in hers. "Winterfell's hospitality is at your command." Robert looks down at young Rob with something that might be fondness. Those shadows linger in his expression. A fine boy. He has the stark look about him. As did his grandfather, Ned replies carefully. The North remembers its blood. The comment hangs in the air like a challenge, and Ned sees Stannis shift slightly, his dark eyes fixed on his brother's face. Whatever intelligence brought Robert north, whatever suspicions drive this massive show of force, they run deeper than mere curiosity about Ned's recent activities. The procession into Winterfell's great hall proceeds with all the ceremony due a king, but Ned feels as though he walks to his own execution. Servants scurry to accommodate the flood of royal guests, while the high table groans beneath the weight of silver plate and crystal goblets brought out for the occasion. Robert takes his seat in the place of honor, his crown catching the light from a dozen torches. To his right sits Stannis, while Tywin claims the position to his left, with the easy confidence of a man who knows his worth. The northern lords arrange themselves at the lower tables, their faces carefully neutral as they observe this unprecedented royal presence in their ancient hall. The feast begins with all the traditional courtesies, but tension crackles beneath the surface like lightning waiting to strike. Robert eats and drinks with mechanical precision, his eyes constantly roving the hall as if searching for threats or secrets. When he speaks, his words carry the weight of royal command rather than friendly conversation. "Tell me of your southern journey, Ned," Robert says during a lull in the general conversation. "I hear you lifted the siege at Storm's End with remarkable efficiency." Ned sets down his goblet with steady hands, though his heart races. "Your grace honors me. The siege was already breaking when I arrived. Lord Tyrell and Lord Redwine saw wisdom in bending the knee to their rightful king." "Indeed," Robert muses, "though I confess surprise at how quickly you concluded matters there. Some of my advisors suggested you might have other business in the south that required attention." The words fall like stones into still water, sending ripples of tension through the assembled company. Ned feels every eye in the hall upon him, measuring his response, judging his loyalty. "A man serves his king as best he can, your grace. I sought to bring peace to the realm as swiftly as possible." Tywin Lannister leans forward slightly, his voice silk over steel. "Admirable efficiency, Lord Stark. Though perhaps you might enlighten us about your route home. The King's Road has seen no sign of your passage." The trap closes around Ned with the precision of a master hunter's snare. He takes a measured sip of wine, buying time while his mind races through possible responses. Round him, the northern lords shift uneasily, sensing the dangerous currents that flow beneath the conversation. "I chose a more direct path through the mountains," Ned says finally. "The war left many displaced persons in need of assistance. Honor demanded that I offer what aid I could." Robert's laugh is harsh and bitter. "Honor. Always honor with you, Ned. But sometimes honor demands difficult choices, doesn't it? Sometimes a man must choose between personal loyalty and service to the realm." Quote, the challenge in Robert's voice is unmistakable now, and Ned feels the weight of Jon Snow's existence pressing down upon him like a mountain. In the nursery above, his sister's son sleeps peacefully, unaware that his very breath might start a war. "I have always sought to serve the realm faithfully, Your Grace, as did my father before me and his father before him." "The realm," Robert repeats, his blue eyes fixed on Ned's face. "Yes, the realm must come before all else, even before the bonds of friendship or family loyalty." Stannis clears his throat, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. "Your Grace, perhaps such weighty matters might be better discussed in private council." But Robert waves him off, his attention entirely focused on Ned. "No, brother, these lords have earned the right to hear their king's concerns. They fought for this peace, bled for this crown. They deserve to know when that peace might be threatened." The hall falls silent, except for the crackling of torches and the distant sound of wind through Winterfell's ancient stones. Every face turns towards the high table, where king and lord regard each other with the wariness of former friends who have become potential enemies. "What threat do you speak of, Your Grace?" Lord Karstark asks, his weathered face creased with concern. Robert's smile is sharp as winter iron. "The threat that always follows in the wake of war, my lord. The threat of those who would see old dynasties restored, old enemies given new life." Ned feels his blood turn to ice in his veins. Robert knows. Perhaps not everything, not yet, but enough to drive him north with an army at his back. The Game of Thrones has begun in earnest, and Ned finds himself woefully unprepared for its deadly intricacies. "I know of no such threats in the north, Your Grace," Ned says, his voice steady despite the fear that gnaws at his heart. "The northern lords bent the knee in good faith. Their loyalty to the crown is absolute." "Is it?" Robert asks softly. "Even when that loyalty conflicts with older, deeper bonds, even when honoring the crown means betraying the memory of the dead." The words hit Ned like physical blows. Robert speaks of Lyanna without naming her, speaks of the promise Ned made in that bloody tower where his sister died bearing a dragon prince's child. Somehow, impossibly, Robert knows enough to be dangerous. Tywin Lannister's voice cuts through the silence like silk over steel. "Perhaps Lord Stark might enlighten us about any discoveries he made during his travels in Dorne. The realm's enemies often leave traces of their passage. After all." Ned meets Tywin's green eyes across the table and sees the cold calculation of a man who has already decided his fate. The Lord of Casterly Rock knows exactly what game is being played here, and he intends to see it through to its bloody conclusion. "I found only what any man would find in Dorne, my lord. Heat and stone, ancient grudges and older sorrows. Nothing else." Robert presses. No traces of Prince Rhaegar's final legacy. No evidence of plans that might threaten the peace we fought so hard to win. The question hangs in the air, like an executioner's axe, and Ned knows that his next words will determine the fate of everyone he holds dear. In the silence, he can hear his own heartbeat, the whisper of wind through stone, the distant cry of a raven calling across the northern sky. "Your Grace," he says finally, "if you have accusations to make them plainly. If you have questions that demand answers, ask them directly. But do not ask me to confess to crimes I have not committed, or betrayals I have not contemplated," the famous Baratheon temper beginning to show through his royal composure. "Very well, Ned. I'll ask you directly. Did you find anything in Dorne that might interest the crown? Any persons, any documents, any children who might represent a threat to the realm's peace?" The hall erupts into whispers and shocked gasps as the true nature of Robert's inquiry becomes clear. The northern lords exchange glances heavy with meaning, while Tywin Lannister watches the proceedings with the satisfaction of a man whose plans come to fruition. Ned looks into Robert's eyes and sees not his childhood friend, but a king driven by paranoia and the weight of a crown that cuts all who wear it. In this moment, he must choose between the truth that might save his own honor and the lie that might preserve his sister's son. I found my sister's bones, Your Grace. Nothing more, nothing less. Whatever else you seek, it does not exist. The lie falls from his lips like lead, heavy with the weight of oaths sworn and promises made. Robert stares at him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of deception. Your sister's bones, Robert repeats slowly. And you would swear to this before gods and men. You would stake your honor, your family's safety, your very life on this claim. Ned stands slowly, his hand resting on the pommel of ice. Around him, the northern lords rise as well, their own hands moving to their weapons as the tension in the hall reaches a breaking point. I swear it, Your Grace, by the old gods and the new, by the honor of House Stark and the memory of my father. I found nothing in Dawn save sorrow and the dust of ancient wrongs. Quote, Robert's eyes never leave Ned's face as he considers this response. In the silence, the very stones of Winterfell seem to hold their breath, waiting for a king's judgment that will reshape the Seven Kingdoms. Very well, Robert says finally, his voice cold as winter wind. We shall speak of this again, Lord Stark. Privately. There are matters between us that require clarification. As the feast resumes its mechanical progression, Ned feels the trap closing around him with the inexorability of fate. Robert knows enough to be dangerous, and the confrontation that awaits them will test not just their friendship, but the very foundations of the realm they both helped to build. In the nursery above, Jon Snow sleeps on, unaware that his young life hangs in the balance of loyalties strained to the breaking point. The private meeting Robert demands takes place in Ned's solar, as dawn breaks grey and cold over Winterfell. The king arrives without ceremony, dismissing his guards with a gesture that speaks of absolute authority. Behind him, Tywin Lannister follows like a golden shadow, his green eyes taking in every detail of the chamber where House Stark has planned and plotted for generations. Ned stands beside his desk, his hand resting on correspondence that bears the seals of northern houses. The letters speak of loyalty and support, but he knows they will mean nothing if Robert has decided his course. The morning light filters through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor, where two friends who once shared everything now face each other as adversaries. Close the door, Ned, Robert commands, his voice carrying the weight of kinship. What we discuss here must remain between us, at least until I decide how much of the truth the realm can bear. The door closes with a soft click that sounds like a death knell in the quiet chamber. Robert moves to the window, staring out at the courtyard where his 20,000 men have made their camp. From this height, the royal host looks like a golden sea punctuated by islands of crimson and black. You lied to me last night, Robert says without turning around. Lied to your king, your brother, your oldest friend. I could have you executed for treason based on that alone. Ned's throat feels dry as dust. Your Grace, I told you the truth as I know it. If you have evidence to the contrary. Evidence. Robert whirls around, his blue eyes blazing with fury. You want evidence? Very well. Show me this bastard you've brought home. Show me the child you claim is yours, and let us see what truth lies in his face. The words hit Ned like physical blows. He had hoped to keep Jon hidden, to weather this storm without exposing the infant to Robert's wrath. But the king's demand leaves no room for negotiation, no space for further deception. Robert, the child is innocent of any crime. Whatever you suspect, Whatever you believe, he has done nothing to deserve your anger. Show me the child, Robert repeats, his voice deadly quiet. Now, to refuse would confirm Robert's suspicions beyond any doubt, would mark both him and Jon for death. With heavy steps, he moves to the solar door and calls for a servant. Bring the wet nurse, he commands. Tell her to bring Jon. Robert paces the solar like a caged wolf, while Tywin watches the proceedings with the cold interest of a man watching pieces move on a game board. Ned stands frozen by the window, his heart hammering against his ribs as he prepares to watch his sister's son face the judgment of kings. The knock at the door comes too soon. A middle-aged woman enters, cradling a small bundle against her chest. The wet nurse's face is pale with fear, clearly sensing the tension that fills the chamber. In her arms, Jon Snow sleeps peacefully, unaware that his young life hangs in the balance. Set him on the desk, Robert commands. Unwrap the blankets so I can see him properly. The woman does as she is bid, her hands trembling as she lays the infant on the polished wood. Jon stirs at the cool air, his tiny fists clenching as his eyes flutter open. When they do, the chamber falls into absolute silence. Even in the grey morning light, Jon's eyes are unmistakably violet, the deep purple of amethysts or twilight skies. His hair, still soft with newborn down, catches what little sunlight filters through the windows and reveals threads of silver gold that mark him as clearly as any royal seal. Robert stares down at the child for a long moment, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and something that might be fear. When he speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. Rhaegar's eyes, Rhaegar's hair. He looks up at Ned with something like horror in his expression. How long have you known? Ned feels the weight of 16 years of lies and half-truths pressing down on him like a mountain. There can be no more deception now, no more careful words or diplomatic evasions. The truth stands before them, violet-eyed and breathing. Since the Tower of Joy, Ned admits. Since I found Lyanna dying in that bed of blood. The words seem to release something terrible in Robert. His face darkens with fury, and his hand moves instinctively to the warhammer at his side. You knew. All these months, through the entire war, you knew that Rhaegar had left a living heir, and you said nothing. She was my sister, Ned says desperately. She was dying, Robert. She begged me to protect him, to keep him safe from those who would see him dead for his father's sins. His father's sins? Robert's voice rises to a roar that echoes off the stone walls. His father stole my betrothed, dishonored her, started a war that killed thousands of good men. And you think I should spare his spawn because your sister asked nicely? Tywin Lannister speaks for the first time since entering the chamber, his voice silk over steel. The boy's parentage explains much, Your Grace. Lord Stark's unusual route home, his reluctance to discuss his southern activities, his haste to reach Winterfell before your arrival. Robert nods grimly. You meant to hide him here, didn't you? Raise him as your bastard. Let him grow strong under the protection of House Stark. Were you planning to press his claim when he came of age? Or were you content to wait for another king to die so you could put a dragon back on the Iron Throne? No. Ned's denial comes out sharper than intended. I never planned treason, Robert. I only wanted to keep him alive, to honor the promise I made to Lyanna. Your sister chose her path when she ran off with that Silver Prince, Robert snarls. She chose Rhaegar over me, chose love over duty, chose to birth a pretender rather than my queen. I owe her memory nothing. On the desk, Jon begins to cry, his infant wails piercing the tension like arrows. The wet nurse starts forward to comfort him, but Robert waves her away with a gesture. Leave us, he commands. All of you. This is a matter for kings and lords, not servants." The woman bows hastily and retreats, leaving the three men alone with the crying infant. Jon's wails seem to fill the chamber, demanding attention that none of them want to give. "Pick him up," Ned says quietly. "Whatever you mean to do, don't let him suffer for it." But Robert makes no move toward the child. Instead, he turns to Tywin, his blue eyes cold as winter ice. "What would you counsel, my lord? How does a king deal with threats to his throne?" Tywin's response is immediate and unflinching. "Threats must be eliminated, Your Grace. Quickly, quietly, and completely. The realm cannot afford another Blackfire rebellion in 20 years' time." And Lord Stark's deception. "How do we handle the man who harbored a pretender?" "That depends," Tywin says smoothly, "on whether Lord Stark chooses to see reason or clings to sentiment that serves no one." All eyes turn to Ned, who stands frozen between his loyalty to Robert and his oath to Lyanna. The choice before him is stark and terrible. Betray his sister's dying wish, or watch everything he holds dear burn in the fire of royal wrath. "Robert," Ned says desperately, "he's just a baby. Whatever threat you think he represents, it lies years in the future. Spare him now, and I swear to you on my father's grave that he will never press any claim, never threaten your throne or your children's inheritance." Robert's laugh is harsh and bitter. "Your oath? The same oath you gave me as we fought side by side throughout this war? The same loyalty that led you to lie to my face and hide a Targaryen heir in the heart of the North?" The accusation hits home, and Ned feels his honor crumble like a tower built on sand. Everything Robert says is true. He has deceived his king, betrayed his friend, chosen family loyalty over the oaths that bind him to the Iron Throne. "I never meant to betray you," Ned whispers. "I only meant to save an innocent child." Innocent? Robert moves closer to the desk, where Jon continues to cry, his violet eyes bright with tears. "Look at him, Ned. Really look. Those are Rhaegar's eyes staring up at you. Rhaegar's face that will grow more pronounced with each passing year. How long before some ambitious lord recognizes him? How long before whispers start about the Dragon Prince's son, hidden in Winterfell?" Tywin nods approvingly. His grace speaks wisdom. The boy's features will only grow more distinctive as he ages. Eventually, someone will make the connection. And then I'll have another rebellion on my hands, Robert finishes grimly. Another war, more dead men, more widows and orphans crying for justice that never comes. Ned reaches toward Jon instinctively, his paternal instincts overriding political calculation. The infant's cries tear at his heart like claws, reminding him of Robb at the same age, of the fierce protectiveness that fatherhood awakens. "Don't," Robert warns, his hand moving to his hammer's haft. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "He's my nephew," Ned says, his voice breaking. "Lyanna's son. How can you ask me to stand aside while you murder my sister's child?" "Because I am your king," Robert roars, his famous temper finally breaking free. "Because you swore an oath of loyalty when you bent the knee. And that oath means more than family sentiment or dying wishes. You chose to serve House Baratheon, Ned. Now prove that choice means something." The chamber falls silent, except for Jon's cries and the distant sounds of the army camped outside. 3 men stand around a helpless infant, weighing his life against the stability of a kingdom that has barely begun to heal from the wounds of war. "There is another option," Tywin says quietly. "The child need not die if he can be neutralized in other ways." Quote, Robert turns to him with interest. Explain. A bastard poses little threat if he never learns his true heritage. Let Lord Stark keep him. Raise him as promised, but ensure he grows up knowing only what we allow him to know. A careful word here, a forgotten detail there. In time, even he might come to believe himself merely another northern bastard. The suggestion hangs in the air like poison, and Ned feels his stomach turn. To raise Jon in ignorance of his birthright, to let him believe himself the product of Ned's faithlessness rather than the last prince of a fallen dynasty, seems almost as cruel as outright murder. And if he discovers the truth anyway, Robert asks, then we deal with him as circumstances require. Tywin replies with a cold smile. But a bastard raised in ignorance poses far less danger than a martyr's corpse that ambitious men might rally around. Robert considers this, his blue eyes fixed on Jon's tear-stained face. The infant has quieted somewhat, his violet eyes wide and unfocused as they stare up at the men who debate his fate. Very well, Robert says finally. The boy lives for now. But Ned, hear me clearly. He remains alive only so long as he poses no threat to my throne or my line. One whisper of rebellion, one attempt to press his claim, one song about the Dragon Prince's lost heir, and I will finish what should have been done today. Relief floods through Ned's body like warm wine, but it is tempered by the knowledge of what this bargain will cost. Jon will live, but he will live a lie, growing up believing himself the bastard son of an honorable man, rather than the true-born prince he actually is. There is one more condition, Robert continues. You will tell no one else the truth, not your wife, not your children, not your most trusted servants. The secret dies with us in this room, or the boy dies with it. Ned nods mutely, though his heart breaks at the thought of the deception he must maintain. Catelyn still believes Jon to be his bastard, still suffers the pain of his supposed betrayal. To let her continue in that belief seems like the cruelest cut of all. Swear it, Robert demands. Swear by the old gods and the new, but you will maintain this deception until your dying breath. I swear, Ned whispers, the words tasting like ashes in his mouth. Robert nods grimly and turns away from the desk, dismissing the infant as if he were no longer worthy of attention. Then it is done. The boy lives, but the dragon dies today. There will be no songs of the lost prince, no whispered legends of Rhaegar's heir. Jon Snow he is, and Jon Snow he shall remain until the end of his days. As the king strides from the solar, with Tywin at his heels, Ned finally reaches for his nephew, gathering the crying infant against his chest. Jon's small body trembles with exhaustion from his ordeal, and Ned whispers wordless comfort as he rocks the child. The truth has been revealed and buried in the same moment, hidden beneath layers of royal decree and political necessity. Jon Snow will live, but at the cost of everything that should have been his by right. The last dragon has been caged in amber, preserved but powerless, alive but forever diminished. Outside the solar windows, 20,000 men prepare to march south, their purpose fulfilled. The realm is safe from the threat of Targaryen restoration, but the price of that safety will echo through the generations yet to come. The horns of Winterfell sound across the northern landscape as the last of the summoned lords arrive throughout the morning. From the battlements, Catelyn watches the banners of a dozen great houses streaming toward her family's castle. The chained giant of House Umber, the white merman of House Manderly, the son of House Karstark, blazing against its field of white. Each arrival brings fresh hope that the North might yet stand united, but also deeper fear of what division could cost them all. In the great courtyard below, tension crackles like lightning waiting to strike. Robert's 20,000 men have formed loose formations around the castle's perimeter, their weapons gleaming in the autumn sun. They wear the casual readiness of professional soldiers, hands never far from sword hilts, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Against this display of royal power, the northern lords gather with their own retainers, smaller groups, but no less determined. Lord Rhaegar Karstark arrives at mid-morning, his weathered face grim beneath iron-grey hair. Behind him ride 50 men, bearing the blazing sun of his house, all of them hardened by years of border warfare against wildling raiders. When he dismounts in the courtyard, his eyes immediately seek out Ned's face, reading the tension written there like words on parchment. "My lord," Karstark says, his voice carrying across the yard. "Your raven spoke of urgent need. How may House Karstark serve?" But before Ned can respond, Robert steps forward, his royal presence commanding immediate attention. The crown sits heavy on his dark hair, and his blue eyes survey the assembled Northmen with the calculating gaze of a king who trusts no one completely. "Lord Karstark," Robert says, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "your service to the realm is noted and appreciated. Your king has need of your loyalty in a matter that touches the very foundations of peace." Karstark's eyes narrow slightly, sensing the undercurrents that flow beneath Robert's formal words. "Your grace honors me. House Karstark has always served faithfully, both the Iron Throne and our liege Lord of Winterfell." "Indeed," Robert replies, "but sometimes those loyalties come into conflict, don't they? Sometimes a man must choose which oath matters more, the one sworn to a king, or the one given to a friend." The courtyard falls silent, except for the stamping of horses and the distant sounds of soldiers making camp. Every man present understands that they have stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple royal visit. This is a test, a moment when words will determine who lives and who dies. The great gates open again to admit Lord Wyman Manderley, his massive frame filling a reinforced saddle as he guides his destrier into the yard. Behind him come 100 men, wearing the green and silver of White Harbor, their weapons polished to mirror brightness. Manderley's small eyes take in the scene with surprising shrewdness, noting the positioning of royal forces, the tension in Ned's posture, the way Robert's hand rests on his warhammer's haft. "Your Grace," Manderley rumbles, his voice like distant thunder. "Lord Stark, I came as quickly as my old bones would allow. What storm gathers that requires such urgency?" Tywin Lannister appears at Robert's shoulder, his golden presence adding weight to the royal authority. "The storm, my lord, is one that threatens the very peace we fought so hard to win. Your king requires the absolute loyalty of his northern subjects in matters that concern the security of the realm." Manderley's eyes shift between Robert and Ned, reading the currents of conflict with the skill of a man who has navigated political waters for decades. "House Manderley has always served faithfully. Our loyalty to the Iron Throne is beyond question, as is our loyalty to House Stark," adds a new voice. The great Jun Umber strides into the courtyard like a force of nature, his massive frame making even Robert look small by comparison. Behind him march 200 men of the last half, their faces hard as the stones of their northern castle. "We came at Lord Stark's summons, as is right and proper. Our liege lord calls, and we answer." Robert's face darkens at the implicit challenge in Umber's words. "Your liege lord, perhaps, but your king stands before you now, Lord Umber. Which oath weighs heavier in your estimation?" The Great Jun's laugh is like the roar of a winter storm. "A hard question, your grace. In the north, we hold to old ways. Old loyalties. House Stark has ruled from Winterfell for 8,000 years. Kings come and go, but the North remembers. The North remembers, Robert repeats, his voice dangerously quiet. Remembers what, exactly? Remembers when it knelt to Aegon the Conqueror. Remembers when it bent the knee to end a rebellion. Or does it remember something else entirely? Ned steps forward, sensing the conversation spiraling toward violence. Your Grace, there is no conflict between northern loyalty and service to the crown. We have always served faithfully. Have you? Robert's question cuts through the courtyard like a blade. Then perhaps you can explain to your bannermen why you harbored secrets from your king. Perhaps you can tell them what you discovered in Dawn that was so important you felt compelled to lie to the crown. The assembled lords exchange glances heavy with meaning. Whatever has passed between king and liege lord, it runs deeper than politics or protocol. This is personal. The breaking of bonds that once seemed unbreakable. What secrets? Lord Karstark asks, his hand moving instinctively toward his sword. Lord Stark, what does the king speak of? Ned feels the weight of every eye upon him, the expectation of men who have followed his family for generations. But Robert's terms echo in his memory. The secret dies with us, or the boy dies with it. He cannot speak the truth without condemning Jon to death. His grace refers to matters of state that need not concern the North. Ned says carefully, I have done what honor demanded, nothing more. Honor, Robert spits. There's that word again. Tell me, Ned, does honor include deceiving your king? Does it include harboring threats to the realm's peace? The Greatjon's hand moves to his sword hilt, the steel singing as it clears the scabbard. Round him, his men follow suit, the sound of drawn steel echoing across the courtyard like the hiss of serpents. I'll hear no man question Lord Stark's honor, Umber growls. Kin or no kin, some words demand an answer. But Robert shows no fear, even faced with 200 angry Northmen. His own hand moves to his warhammer, and suddenly the courtyard bristles with the promise of violence. Royal guards move into position, while Lannister soldiers form ranks with the efficiency of professional killers. Stand down, Robert commands, his voice carrying absolute authority. I am your king, sworn and crowned. Any man who draws steel against me commits treason, and the penalty for treason is death. And any man who threatens House Stark in its own hall courts the same fate. The Greatjon replies, We are the North, your grace. We do not kneel easily, and we do not forget easily. Lord Manderley raises his hands, his bulk interposing between the two sides. Peace, my lords. This is Winterfell, not a battlefield. Surely words can resolve whatever dispute has arisen. But Tywin Lannister shakes his golden head. Some disputes cannot be resolved with words, my lord. Some require decisive action to prevent greater bloodshed. More banners appear at the gates as additional northern lords arrive to find their liege lord facing off against their king. Lord Serwyn brings his men, as does Lady Mormont from Bear Island, her face grim beneath iron-grey hair. Each arrival tips the balance slightly, adding more armed men to an already volatile situation. Choose, Robert demands, his voice cutting through the growing tension. All of you choose now. Your king stands before you, requiring your loyalty in a matter that affects the security of the realm. Will you stand with the crown, or will you follow your liege lord into treason? The word hangs in the air like a sentence of death. Treason, the ultimate crime, punishable by execution, forfeiture of lands, the destruction of entire houses. Every man in the courtyard understands the stakes now. Lord Manderley is the first to speak, his voice heavy with reluctance. Your Grace, House Manderley has always served the Iron Throne faithfully. if Lord Stark has indeed committed offences against the crown, then justice must be done, according to the king's will. The words hit like physical blows, and Ned sees the surprise and hurt in the Great John's face. Manderley's defection creates the first crack in northern unity, the beginning of a split that could tear the region apart. White Harbour has grown rich on southern trade. Umber snarls. Easy to forget old loyalties when gold weighs heavy in your purse. I forget nothing, Manderley replies with dignity, but neither can I ignore my oath to the Iron Throne. Some things transcend regional loyalty. Lord Karstark steps forward, his weathered face creased with thought. Your Grace, might we know the nature of Lord Stark's alleged offence? It seems harsh to demand judgment without understanding the crime. Robert's smile is sharp as winter iron. The crime Lord Karstark is harbouring a pretender to the Iron Throne. The crime is concealing the existence of a Targaryen heir while swearing loyalty to House Baratheon. The revelation sends shockwaves through the assembled lords. Some step backward in surprise, while others move closer to their weapons. The mention of Targaryen restoration touches the deepest fears of men who lived through years of civil war. Impossible, breathes Lady Mormont. The dragon mine is ended. Prince Rhaegar is dead, his children slaughtered in the sack of King's Landing. Lord Stark discovered something in Dorne, something he chose to conceal from his rightful king. The question now is whether the North will stand with a man who harbours pretenders, or with the king who ended the Targaryen tyranny. The courtyard erupts into chaos as lords and their men choose sides. Some move toward Manderley and the promise of royal favour, while others rally around the Great John and traditional northern loyalty. Steel rings against steel as men draw weapons, though no blood flows yet in the tension-filled air. Stop, Ned calls out, his voice cutting through the noise. Stop this madness. Whatever crimes you lay at my feet, these men are innocent. They came at their lord's summons, nothing more. But Robert shows no mercy. They came at the summons of a man who harboured a Targaryen heir. They must choose now, loyalty to the crown that protects them, or loyalty to a lord who would see the realm burn for the sake of misguided honour. The Great John raises his massive sword toward the sky, its steel gleaming in the autumn sun. I choose the North. I choose House Stark. I choose the lords who held Winterfell when dragons ruled the South. And when dragons fell, the North remembers, and we remember, that our loyalty runs deeper than fear. His words rally the wavering lords, bringing them back to their traditional allegiance. But the division remains, a crack that threatens to split the North down the middle. On one side stand those who fear royal wrath more than ancestral loyalty. On the other stand those who would follow House Stark into the very mouth of hell. Robert surveys the split forces with satisfaction. A divided North cannot threaten his throne, cannot unite against royal authority. By forcing this choice, he has shattered northern unity for a generation. So be it, Robert says finally. Let it be recorded that Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell stands accused of treason against the crown. Let it be recorded that some northern lords remain loyal to their rightful king, while others choose the path of rebellion. The words fall like stones into still water, sending ripples that will spread across the Seven Kingdoms. The North is divided. House Stark stands accused, and 20,000 royal swords wait to enforce the king's justice. In the silence that follows, only the wind speaks, carrying the promise of winter and the whisper of changes that will reshape the realm forever. The final confrontation begins not with trumpets or formal declarations, but with Robert's cold demand echoing across Winterfell's courtyard. Bring me the child, the king commands, his voice carrying the absolute authority of the Iron Throne. Bring me the Targaryen bastard, and this ends without further bloodshed. Ned feels the weight of every eye upon him as he stands before his family's ancient castle. Behind him, the God's Wood stretches dark and mysterious, its ancient trees whispering secrets older than kingdoms. Before him, 20,000 royal swords wait for their king's command. "No," Ned says quietly, the word falling like a stone into still water. "Jon Snow is my son, my blood, my responsibility. I will not surrender him to royal justice." Robert's face darkens with fury. "Your son? Still you maintain that lie even now. Do you think me blind, Ned? Do you think I cannot see Rhaegar's face staring back at me from that infant's features?" The great Jon steps forward, his massive frame interposing between king and lord. "If you want Lord Stark's boy, your grace, you'll have to go through the north to get him." Round Umber, the loyal northern lords form ranks with their men. Lord Karstark draws his sword with a ring of steel, while Lady Mormont positions her island warriors in a protective circle around Ned. They are outnumbered 5-1, but their faces show no fear, only the grim determination of wolves backed into a corner. "So be it," Robert snarls, his hand moving to his war hammer. "Lord Manderley, Lord Serwyn, your kin commands you to arrest the traitor Eddard Stark and surrender the pretender to royal custody." But Lord Manderley hesitates, his small eyes darting between the two sides. "Your Grace, perhaps we might resolve this without bloodshed. Lord Stark is an honorable man. Surely he can be reasoned with." The time for reason has passed, Tywin Lannister declares, his golden armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. The choice is simple: loyalty to the crown or treason. There is no middle ground. The first blow falls without warning. One of the royal guards, eager to prove his loyalty, lunges forward with his spear aimed at the great Jon's heart. But Umber moves with surprising speed for such a massive man, his great sword sweeping in a deadly arc that takes the guard's head clean from his shoulders. For the north, Umber roars, his voice echoing off the castle walls. For House Stark, the courtyard explodes into chaos as two armies collide in the heart of Winterfell. Steel rings against steel as Northmen clash with royal guards, while the loyal lords fight desperately against overwhelming odds. Blood spatters the ancient stones as men die for oaths sworn and loyalties tested. Ned draws ice from its sheath, the Valyrian steel singing as it tastes the air. The great sword has defended House Stark for 400 years, and now it must do so again against a king who was once a brother. Round him, his faithful bannermen fight like men possessed, their weapons carving through royal ranks with the fury of winter storms. Meanwhile, in the keep above, Catelyn hears the sound of battle and knows that her world is ending. She clutches Robb against her chest, the boy's dark eyes wide with fear at the sounds of violence echoing from the courtyard below. In her other arm, she holds Jon Snow, the infant whose existence has brought such terrible consequences to her family. "My lady." Ser Rodrik appears at her side, his weathered face grim with purpose. "We must get you away from here. The castle is no longer safe." "Where can we go?" Catelyn asks desperately. Robert's men surround Winterfell. There is no escape. "The crypts," the old knight replies. "The passages beneath the castle lead to the God's Wood. If Lord Stark can hold them at the entrance, we might reach the hidden ways that lead beyond the walls." Catelyn nods, gathering her courage as she prepares to flee her own home. Behind her, servants scatter like leaves before a storm. Some loyal enough to die for House Stark, others wise enough to seek safety in surrender. In the courtyard, the battle rages with increasing ferocity. The Greatjon cuts down 3 royal guards with sweeping blows of his massive sword. his laughter echoing across the yard like thunder. But for every enemy he fells, two more take their place, and slowly the northern forces are driven back toward the Godswood. Lord Karstark fights beside his liege lord, his blade singing as it parries thrust after thrust from Lannister swords. "The children, my lord," he shouts over the din of battle. "Have you secured the children?" Ned glances back toward the keep, trusting that Catelyn has heard the sounds of war and taken appropriate action. Ice sweeps in a deadly arc, cutting down a royal guard who ventures too close, but more enemies press forward with each passing moment. "Fall back," Ned commands, "to the Godswood. Make them pay for every step." The northern forces retreat in good order, their weapons holding the royal army at bay as they move toward the ancient grove that has stood at Winterfell's heart since the dawn of days. The narrow paths between the trees favor defenders, and here the north might make its final stand. Robert follows with his hammer held high, his crown gleaming despite the blood that spatters his royal surcoat. "You cannot run forever, Ned," he shouts. "The boy dies today, along with every man who stands with you." In the crypts beneath the castle, Catelyn makes her desperate way through passages carved from living rock. The ancient tombs of Stark kings watch her passage with stone eyes, their iron swords rusted with age, but their dignity intact. Robb whimpers against her shoulder, while Jon sleeps fitfully in her arms, unaware that his young life hangs in the balance of steel and blood. "This way, my lady," Sir Roderick whispers, leading them through twisting corridors lit only by the torch he carries. The passage opens near the heart tree. If Lord Stark can hold them long enough, behind them, the sounds of battle grow fainter, but no less desperate. Men scream and die in Winterfell's yard, their blood watering stones that have seen 8,000 years of Stark rule. The very foundations of the North shake with the violence that tears the realm apart. The Godswood proves a killing ground worthy of its ancient purpose. Among the trees, where Stark children have played for generations, northern swords drink deep of southern blood. The Great Jon holds the main path, his massive frame blocking passage like a living wall of muscle and steel. Around him, his companions fight with the fury of cornered wolves, their weapons seeking gaps in royal armor. But the numbers tell against them. For every royal guard who falls, 3 more push forward over his corpse. Slowly, inexorably, the defenders are driven back toward the heart of the wood, where the great weirwood stands, with its carved face watching all who pass beneath its branches. Ned finds himself pressed back against the pale trunk, ice-weaving patterns of death as royal guards close in from all sides. His breath comes in ragged gasps, and blood from a dozen minor wounds stains his grey doublet. Around him, the last of his loyal bannermen fight with the desperation of men who know they face their final hour. "Yield," Robert shouts, his war hammer crushing the skull of a northern man-at-arms. "Yield, and I swear your death will be clean." But Ned shakes his head, his grey eyes fixed on his childhood friend with something like pity. "I made a promise, Robert. To her, I cannot break it, not even for you." The king's face twists with rage and something that might be grief. "Then you die for your sister's bastard, just as she died for her dragon prince. Some promises are not worth keeping, Ned." Robert raises his hammer for the killing blow, its spiked head gleaming with the blood of northern dead. But before he can strike, a new sound echoes through the Godswood, the horn of House Stark blown 3 times in the ancient signal of distress. From the hidden passage near the heart tree, Catelyn emerges with both children clutched against her chest. Her auburn hair is disheveled from her flight through the crypts, and her blue eyes are wild with fear and desperation. "Stop!" she cries, her voice cutting through the sounds of battle. Please, your grace, I beg you. These are innocent children. Robert's hammer wavers as he sees the woman he once courted for her brother Brandon, the lady who might have been queen if the wheel of fate had turned differently. Behind her, Sir Roderick and a handful of loyal servants form a protective circle, their weapons drawn but their faces showing the hopelessness of their position. Lady Stark, Robert says quietly, his voice carrying strange gentleness amid the carnage. You should not be here. This is no place for women and children. Then end it, Catelyn pleads, stepping closer despite the ring of swords that surrounds her. You have won, your grace. Winterfell is yours. The north is divided. What more do you need? Robert's eyes fix on the infant in her arms, the child whose violet eyes and silver gold hair mark him as clearly as any royal seal. I need the pretender's life. I need to know that my throne will not face challenge from a dragon's spawn. He is just a baby, Catelyn whispers, her voice breaking with emotion. Whatever his father's crimes, whatever threats you imagine, he is innocent of all wrongdoing. Innocent today, perhaps, but what of tomorrow? What of 10 years hence, when songs of the lost prince spread through the realm? What of 20 years hence, when he comes of age and learns his father's name? The Greatjon, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still standing, raises his sword one final time. The boy is under House Stark's protection. That means something in the north, even if it means nothing to southern kings. His words rally the surviving Northmen, and they close ranks around their lord and his family. But they number fewer than 20 now, surrounded by hundreds of royal swords. The outcome is no longer in doubt, only the manner of their ending. I offer terms, Robert says finally, his hammer lowering slightly. Surrender the boy, and Lady Stark and her true-born son go free. Refuse, and all die here beneath the heart tree. At young Robb, who stares with frightened eyes at the carnage around him. At Jon Snow, whose infant face shows no understanding of the forces that swirl around his cradle. The choice before him is stark and terrible. Sacrifice his sister's son to save his own family, or watch them all die for the sake of an oath sworn in a tower of bones and blood. Catelyn, he says quietly, his voice barely audible above the wind that sighs through the weirwood's branches. Take Robb and go. This is not your fight. But she shakes her head, her jaw set with Tully stubbornness. We stand together, husband. We live together or die together, but we do not abandon family. Her words ring through the godswood like a bell, and Ned feels his heart break with love and pride. Whatever mistakes he has made, whatever lies he has told, this moment proves that honor still lives in the world. Then we make our stand here, he says, raising ice toward the carved face of the heart tree, in sight of the old gods, in the place where House Stark has prayed for 8,000 years. If we must die, let it be in the shadow of our fathers. The final battle begins as the sun sets behind Winterfell's towers, casting long shadows across the godswood, where loyalties are tested and oaths are kept unto death. Steel rings against steel, as the last defenders of House Stark sell their lives dearly, their blood watering the roots of trees that have witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms. But 20 men, however brave, cannot stand against hundreds. One by one, the northern defenders fall until only Ned remains, his back against the weirwood's pale trunk, ice weaving desperate patterns as Robert's hammer descends for the final time. The godswood falls silent, except for the whisper of wind through ancient branches as the last of Ned's loyal bannermen lies still upon the bloodied earth. The Greatjon sprawls motionless near the entrance to the grove, his massive frame pierced by a dozen wounds, while Lord Karstark stares sightlessly at the carved face of the heart tree. Lady Mormont died with her sword in her hand. Her final breath, a curse upon southern kings. Only 2 men remain standing in the sacred grove where House Stark has prayed for 8,000 years. Robert Baratheon, king of the Andals and the First Men, hefts his warhammer with practiced ease, its spiked head dark with northern blood. Across from him, Eddard Stark raises ice, the Valyrian steel blade that has defended his family since before the conquest. Between them, Catelyn kneels beside the pale trunk of the weirwood, both children clutched against her chest. Robb cries with the terrified wails of a child who has seen too much violence, while Jon sleeps with the peaceful oblivion of infancy. The babe's violet eyes remain closed, unaware that 2 kins' worth of rage and betrayal are about to determine his fate. "It doesn't have to end this way," Ned says quietly, his grey eyes never leaving Robert's face. "You have your crown, Robert. You have your throne. Let that be enough." Robert's laugh is harsh and bitter. "Enough? How can it be enough when dragon spawn breathes under my very nose? How can it be enough when my oldest friend lies to my face and harbors pretenders?" "He's an infant," Ned pleads, shifting his grip on ice as royal guards form a circle around the heart tree. "Whatever threat you imagine, he poses none now. Let him live, and I give you my word, he will never trouble your reign." "Your word?" Robert's voice rises with fury. "Your word means nothing, Ned. You swore loyalty to me when I took the crown, swore to serve faithfully and honestly. Yet, all the while you hid a Targaryen heir like a dagger aimed at my heart." The carved face of the weirwood watches with ancient eyes as 2 friends prepare to destroy each other. Red sap weeps from the tree's wounds like tears of blood, and the wind through its branches sounds almost like voices whispering of old betrayals and older loyalties. "I never meant to betray you," Ned says, his voice heavy with regret. "Lyanna made me promise, Robert. She was dying, and she begged me to protect her son. What would you have done? Could you have let her child die?" "Yes," Robert snarls without hesitation. "For the good of the realm, for the peace we fought to win. Yes, some promises should never be made, and some oaths should never be kept." Catelyn's voice cuts through the tension like a blade. "Your Grace, please, I beg you, as a mother, as a woman who has lost enough already. These children are innocent of any crime save being born. Surely your justice extends to mercy." Robert looks down at her for a moment, and something flickers in his blue eyes. Perhaps memory of the girl he once courted, perhaps recognition of the pain that war has brought to all of them. But then, his gaze falls on Jon's sleeping face, on the silver-gold hair that marks him as dragon spawn, and his expression hardens like steel in winter. "There can be no mercy for Targaryen blood," he says finally. "Not after what they did to this realm, what they cost us all." The boy dies, and the line ends forever. Ned raises ice between them, the Valyrian steel catching what little sunlight filters through the weirwood's branches. "Then you'll have to kill me first, brother. I will not break my oath to Lyanna, not even for you." "Brother." Robert hefts his warhammer, feeling its familiar weight in his hands. "We stopped being brothers the moment you chose a dead dragon over a living king. We stopped being brothers when you decided that Targaryen blood mattered more than Baratheon friendship." The first blow comes without warning, Robert's hammer, sweeping in a deadly arc, aimed at Ned's head. But the Lord of Winterfell is no stranger to combat, and ice rises to intercept the strike. Valyrian steel rings against castle-forged iron as the 2 weapons meet, sending shockwaves up both men's arms. Robert presses his attack, using his hammer's reach and weight to drive Ned back against the weirwood's trunk. Each blow carries enough force to crush bone, but Ned's blade turns them aside with desperate skill. Ice weaves patterns of defense, its pale metal gleaming like captured moonlight as it seeks gaps in Robert's guard. "You were always too honorable for your own good," Robert pants, swinging his hammer in brutal overhead strikes. "Always putting duty before sense, oaths before survival. It's going to get you killed, Ned." Ned says nothing, conserving his breath for the deadly dance of steel and iron. P darts forward, ice seeking Robert's heart. But the king twists aside and brings his hammer around in a crushing backhand. Ned barely gets his sword up in time, the impact jarring his arms and nearly tearing the weapon from his grip. Catelyn watches in horror as the two men she has known since childhood try to murder each other in the shadow of the heart tree. Robb has stopped crying, his dark eyes wide with the terrible fascination children show for violence they cannot understand. In her other arm, Jon stirs fitfully, his violet eyes fluttering open, as if sensing the violence that swirls around him. The duel rages back and forth across the sacred grove, neither man able to gain decisive advantage. Robert's hammer carries devastating force, but Ned's blade is faster, sharper, guided by years of practice and desperate need. They fight among the fallen bodies of loyal Northmen, their boots slipping in blood that waters the ancient roots of the godswood. "You could have been the greatest king in Westeros," Ned gasps as he barely dodges another crushing blow. "We could have ruled together, brought peace to the Seven Kingdoms. Why throw it all away for vengeance?" "Because," Robert snarls, pressing his attack with renewed fury, "some things matter more than peace. Some crimes demand justice, no matter the cost. Your sister chose her path when she crowned Rhaegar at Harrenhal. Now her bastard pays the price." The mention of Lyanna sends fresh rage coursing through Ned's veins. Ice flickers like silver lightning, its edge seeking gaps in Robert's defense with deadly precision. The Valyrian steel finds its mark, opening a gash along Robert's sword arm that sends blood streaming down to stain his hammer's haft. But Robert shows no sign of slowing. If anything, the wound seems to fuel his fury, and his next blow comes with such force that ice nearly breaks under the impact. The Valyrian steel holds, but Ned stumbles backward, his defense failing under the relentless assault. "First blood to the wolf," Robert pants, favoring his wounded arm, but last blood to the stag. As always, they circle each other like predators, both breathing hard from the exertion of combat. Round them, royal guards watch in fascination as their king fights for his throne's security. No man among them doubts the outcome. Robert Baratheon has never lost in single combat, never failed to crush his enemies beneath his hammer's weight. But Ned fights with more than skill or strength. He fights with the memory of Lyanna's dying words, with the weight of promises made in towers of bone and blood. Every blow he strikes carries the force of oaths sworn and loyalties tested. Every parry echoes with the whispered pleas of a sister who died believing in his protection. The end comes suddenly, as endings often do in combat between skilled warriors. Ned overextends himself in a desperate thrust, seeking Robert's heart with Ice's gleaming point. But the king anticipates the move, stepping aside and bringing his hammer round in a crushing blow that catches Ned's sword arm. The sound of breaking bone echoes across the godswood like the crack of thunder. Ice falls from nerveless fingers as Ned staggers, his right arm hanging useless at his side. Blood streams from compound fractures where Robert's hammer has shattered bone and torn flesh. "Yield," Robert commands, raising his weapon for the killing blow. "Yield, and I promise your death will be quick." But Ned shakes his head, sinking to his knees before the heart tree, where his ancestors have prayed since the dawn of days. "I cannot yield, Robert. I gave my word," Robert says, and brings his hammer down with all the force of royal wrath. The blow takes Ned in the chest, crushing ribs and stopping his heart with the finality of king's justice. The last Lord of Winterfell falls forward onto the bloodied earth, his grey eyes staring sightlessly at the carved face that has watched over his family for generations. Catelyn's scream pierces the evening air, a sound of such raw anguish that even hardened soldiers turn away in shame. She rocks both children against her chest, her tears falling like rain on Jon's peaceful face as she realizes that her world has ended with the fall of her husband's body. Robert stands over his fallen friend, his hammer dripping with blood, and his face a mask of grief and fury. The crown sits heavy on his dark hair, heavier now for the weight of friendship sacrificed on the altar of royal necessity. "It's done," he says quietly, his voice barely audible above the wind. "The wolf is dead. The dragon's protector has fallen." Tywin Lannister approaches through the circle of guards, his golden armor pristine despite the carnage that surrounds them. "A necessary victory, Your Grace. The realm will sleep more soundly, knowing that threats to your throne have been eliminated." But Robert shows no satisfaction in his triumph. He stares down at Ned's body with something like wonder, as if he cannot quite believe what he has done. "We were boys together," he murmurs. "We fought side by side, bled together, shared everything. And now you are king," Tywin says firmly. "And kings must sometimes do terrible things for the good of the realm. History will remember you as the man who ended the Targaryen threat forever." Robert nods slowly, then turns his attention to Catelyn and the children she protects. The woman who might once have been his queen looks up at him with eyes full of hatred and despair, her beautiful face streaked with tears and dirt. "Lady Stark," Robert says, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Your husband fought bravely. He died as a lord should die, defending what he believed was right. You murdered him," Catelyn whispers, her voice hoarse from screaming. "You murdered the best man in the Seven Kingdoms for the sake of a crown you don't deserve." The words hit Robert like physical blows, but he does not flinch. "Perhaps I did. Perhaps that's what kings do. Murder good men who stand in the way of necessary choices." He looks down at Jon Snow, at the infant whose violet eyes stare up at him with the unfocused gaze of babes. In that tiny face, Robert sees echoes of the man who stole his betrothed, who started a war that cost thousands of lives, who died believing in prophecies and destinies. "The boy," Tywin says quietly. "What are your commands regarding the Pretender?" Robert hefts his hammer, its weight somehow different now that it has tasted the blood of friendship. A single blow would end the threat forever, would ensure that no dragon blood remains to trouble his reign. The realm would be safe, the crown secure, the victory complete. But as he looks into Catelyn's tear-stained face, as he sees the way she holds both children against her heart, something stops him. Perhaps it is exhaustion, perhaps mercy, perhaps simply the recognition that enough blood has been spilled on this cursed day. "Let him live," Robert says finally, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Ned Stark died to protect him. Let that sacrifice mean something." Catelyn's eyes widen with surprise and desperate hope. "Your Grace, the boy lives," Robert repeats, his voice growing stronger. "But he remains here, at Winterfell, under royal supervision. He will be raised as Ned's bastard, nothing more, nothing less. And if he ever shows signs of remembering his true heritage," Robert's voice trails off, the threat implicit. As the sun sets behind Winterfell's towers, Robert Baratheon stands triumphant in the Godswood, where ancient kings once held court. Round him lie the bodies of the dead, testament to the price of crowns and the weight of oaths. In his victory, he has saved the realm from the threat of Targaryen restoration. But, looking down at his fallen friend, at the woman whose husband he has just killed, Robert wonders if some victories cost more than defeats. The Iron Throne is secure, the realm at peace, but the price of that peace will echo through his dreams for the rest of his days. The last dragon lives, but the wolf is dead, and with him dies something precious that can never be restored. The silence that follows Ned Stark's death stretches across Winterfell's godswood like a shroud. Even the wind seems to hold its breath, as Robert Baratheon stands over the body of his oldest friend, his war hammer dripping blood onto the sacred earth where House Stark has prayed for 8,000 years. The carved face of the heart tree weeps red sap like tears of mourning, as if the ancient gods themselves grieve for what has been lost. Catelyn kneels beside the weirwood's pale trunk, her body shaking with grief so profound it seems to emanate from the very stones beneath her. She clutches both children against her chest, Robb, who stares with wide dark eyes at his father's still form, and Jon Snow, whose violet eyes remain mercifully closed in infant sleep. Her auburn hair falls like a veil around her tear-stained face, and when she speaks, her voice carries the cold fury of winter itself. "Murderer," she whispers, the word cutting through the evening air like a blade. "Kinslayer, you have broken the oldest laws of gods and men. Robert Baratheon, you have killed a man who loved you as a brother." Robert flinches as if struck, but his grip on the crown tightens. "I did what kings must do, Lady Stark. I protected the realm from threats that would see it burn." Crets. Catelyn's laugh is harsh and broken. A sleeping infant, a man, whose only crime was keeping a promise to his dying sister. What manner of king sees threats in cradles and honor? Around them, the surviving royal guards shift uncomfortably. These are hard men, veterans of the rebellion who have seen their share of necessary violence. But even they seem troubled by what has transpired in this sacred grove, by the sight of their king standing triumphant over a friend's corpse. Tywin Lannister approaches through the circle of soldiers, his golden armor unmarked by the blood that stains the ground. "Your Grace, we must secure the keep and establish order. The realm will expect decisive action," quote. But Robert barely hears him. His eyes remain fixed on Ned's body, on the man who had stood with him through every battle of the rebellion, who had saved his life at the Bells, and fought beside him at the Trident, the friend who had believed in honor above all else, even unto death. "We were boys together," Robert murmurs, his voice barely audible above the wind. "We dreamed of glory, of winning tournaments, and marrying beautiful maids. He was going to be my brother by marriage, part of my family. And now he is dead, and you are king," Tywin says firmly. "The past is done, Your Grace. It is the future that requires your attention." From the shadows near the Godswood's entrance, the surviving northern lords emerge like ghosts from a nightmare. Lord Manderly limps forward, his bulk diminished by the horrors he has witnessed. Behind him come the remnants of houses that chose loyalty to the crown over allegiance to Stark, men whose faces show the terrible cost of their decision. "Your Grace," Manderly says, his voice thick with emotion. "It is done. The rebellion is ended." He looks around the Godswood at the bodies of brave men who died for oaths and loyalties, at the blood that waters the roots of trees older than kingdoms. "Is this victory, my lord? Is this what we fought for?" "It is survival, Your Grace," Tywin interjects. "It is the preservation of order over chaos, of peace over war. History will vindicate your choices." Caitlin struggles to her feet, still holding both children close. Her blue eyes burn with a cold fire as she faces the man who has destroyed her world. History will remember you as the king who murdered honor itself. My children will grow up knowing that their father died defending innocence, while their king stood by and watched. Robert's face darkens. Your children will grow up knowing that their father chose treason over loyalty, chose dead dragons over living kings. They will learn that oaths to the crown matter more than sentiment. Will they? Caitlin's voice drops to a whisper that somehow carries more menace than a shout. Will they learn loyalty from a king who breaks faith with his oldest friends? Or will they learn that power corrupts even the worthy? Before Robert can respond, Maester Luwin appears at the edge of the clearing, his grey robes mud-stained from his journey through the castle's secret passages. The old man's face shows the weight of knowledge gained too late, the understanding that arrives when tragedy has already struck. "Your Grace," Luwin says quietly. "Lady Stark, the keep has been secured. The servants await your commands." Robert nods mechanically, then turns his attention to the infant in Caitlin's arms. Jon Snow sleeps peacefully, unaware that his very existence has cost so much blood, so many lives. The babe's silver-gold hair catches what little light filters through the weirwood's branches, marking him as clearly as any royal seal. "Give me the child," Robert commands. Catelyn's arms tighten protectively around Jon. "No. You have taken my husband. You will not take this innocent babe as well." "He is not yours to protect," Robert replies coldly. "He is the last of a dynasty that threatened the realm. His fate is mine to decide." "His fate?" Caitlyn's voice rises with desperate fury. "He is a baby, Your Grace. Whatever his lineage, whatever blood flows in his veins, he has done nothing to deserve your hatred." Robert steps closer, his hand moving to his hammer's haft. His blood is guilt enough. Dragon blood breeds dragon dreams, Lady Stark. Today he is an infant. Tomorrow he could be the rallying cry for every malcontent who opposes my rule. "Then what would you have?" Caitlin asks, her voice breaking. "Another murder? Another innocent life ended to feed your paranoia." For a long moment, Robert stares down at the sleeping child, weighing options that all seem to lead to damnation. He could end the threat now, with a single blow from his hammer. The realm would be safe, the Targaryen line extinct, his crown secure for all time. But as he looks into Catelyn's tear-streaked face, as he sees the accusation in her eyes, something stays his hand. Perhaps it is exhaustion from the terrible day's work. Perhaps it is the memory of Lyanna's voice, begging him to spare what she held dear. Perhaps it is simply the recognition that some victories cost more than defeats. "The child lives," Robert says finally, "but he remains under royal custody, to be raised as befits his station. He will know no name but Snow, no heritage but bastardry. And if he ever shows signs of remembering his true parentage, the threat hangs unspoken in the evening air." Caitlyn's relief is palpable, but it is tempered by the bitter knowledge of what such mercy costs. And what of Winterfell? What of the North? Tywin Lannister answers before Robert can speak. "The North will be pacified, my lady. New lords will be appointed, loyal houses elevated, rebel holdings distributed among those who served the crown faithfully. Order will be restored." "Order," Caitlin repeats bitterly. "The order of the grave, perhaps. You have killed the best of us, and call it justice." Robert turns away from her accusations, unable to meet her eyes. "Lord Manderley, you will serve as interim Lord of Winterfell until the king's justice can be fully administered. Ensure that the castle is secured and that all who dwell here understand their new circumstances." Manderley bows reluctantly. "As you command, Your Grace." though I would counsel caution. The North has long memories, and this day's work will not be forgotten easily. Let them remember, Robert says harshly. Let them remember what happens to those who harbor pretenders and practice treason. Perhaps their memories will make them better subjects. As the royal guards begin the grim work of clearing bodies from the godswood, Robert allows himself one final look at his fallen friend. Ned lies where he fell, his grey eyes staring sightlessly at the sky where the first stars are beginning to appear. Blood has pooled beneath him, darker than the ancient earth where his ancestors rest. "We were going to change the world," Robert whispers, so quietly that only the wind hears his words. "We were going to bring peace to the realm, justice to the innocent, honor to the throne. And look what we have made instead." Tywin joins him beside the body, his voice pragmatic as always. "You have made a kingdom, Your Grace. You have secured the throne for your line and eliminated threats that could have torn the realm apart. That is no small achievement." "Achievement," Robert repeats hollowly. "Yes, I suppose it is an achievement to murder one's oldest friend in the name of necessity. I suppose history will call it wisdom." "History will call it kingship," Tywin corrects. "The strong do what they must, Your Grace. The weak do what they can. You chose strength, and the realm will benefit." And as he sees the accusation in Catelyn's eyes and feels the weight of Jon Snow's existence pressing down upon him like a mountain, he wonders if strength and wisdom are the same thing. He has won everything he fought for: the crown, the realm, the security of his dynasty. Yet the taste of victory is ash in his mouth. The northern lords who survived the day's violence approach slowly, their faces showing the grim recognition of defeat. Lord Serwyn kneels first, his weathered features marked by tears he will not shed in the presence of his enemies. Behind him, the remnants of other houses follow suit, bending the knee to a king they neither love nor respect. "Your Grace," Serwyn says through gritted teeth, "the North acknowledges your authority." But Robert can hear the hatred beneath the formal words, can see the way these men's hands hover near their weapons, even in surrender. He has their submission, but not their loyalty. He has broken their resistance, but not their spirit. "Rise," Robert commands, feeling the weight of their resentment like chains around his neck. "You have served your liege lord with honor. That honor will be remembered, even if your lord will not." The words are meant to be gracious, but they ring hollow in the blood-stained grove. Honor, Robert is learning, becomes a more complicated concept when viewed from a throne built on the bones of friends. As night falls over Winterfell, the royal party prepares for the long journey south. There will be time later to appoint new lords, to redistribute lands and titles among the faithful. For now, Robert wants only to escape the ancient castle where he has won his greatest victory and suffered his most terrible defeat. Catelyn remains by the heart tree, with her children, refusing all offers of escort or assistance. She will not leave her husband's side until he has been properly honored, properly buried according to the customs of his fathers. Let the king depart with his bloody crown and his hollow triumph. Let him take the child he fears so much and raise him in ignorance of his birthright. The North will remember what happened in this godswood. The North will remember that House Stark died defending the innocent, while their king lived by betraying the loyal. And someday, when the songs are written and the stories told, men will ask whether Robert Baratheon truly won anything worth having when he traded his soul for a throne. As the royal banners disappear into the southern darkness, Catelyn Stark sits vigil over her husband's body, beneath the watchful eyes of gods whose tears run red as blood. Round her, the wind whispers through ancient branches, carrying promises of winter and the echo of oaths that will never be broken. The wolf is dead, but the North remembers, and memory, in the end, may prove stronger than crowns. The royal pavilion stands like a golden island in the sea of black and crimson tents that stretches across the fields south of Winterfell, inside its silk walls. Robert Baratheon sits at a campaign table, surrounded by the men who will help him reshape the Seven Kingdoms. Maps of the North spread before them like conquered territory, marked with the holdings of houses loyal and rebellious, while reports of the day's bloody work pile high beside goblets of wine that taste like ash. Jon Snow sleeps in a wicker basket near the king's chair, wrapped in furs that bear no sigil, no mark of the heritage that has cost so much blood. The infant stirs occasionally, his violet eyes opening to stare at the canvas ceiling with the unfocused gaze of the newborn. He knows nothing of the debates that swirl around him, nothing of the futures being planned and discarded by men who see him as both threat and opportunity. The simplest solution remains the clearest, Tywin Lannister says, his golden fingers drumming against the table's edge. A single blow, quickly administered, and the threat ends forever. No songs will be sung of a dead pretender. No legends will grow around a corpse. Stannis Baratheon nods grimly from his position across the table. My brother speaks truly, Your Grace. Mercy to enemies breeds only future enemies. The boy's bloodline makes him dangerous regardless of his age or intentions. But Robert stares down at the sleeping child with something like wonder in his blue eyes. In the flickering candlelight, Jon's features seem almost ethereal, marked with the otherworldly beauty that flows in Targaryen blood. Yet there is something of Lyanna in the shape of his face, something that speaks of the sister Robert loved and lost to dragon dreams. He looks so much like her, Robert murmurs, his voice barely audible above the wind that rattles the pavilion walls. When she was young, before Harrenhal, before everything went wrong. Sometimes I forget that he is Rhaegar's son and remember only that he is hers. Tywin's expression hardens. Sentiment is a luxury kings cannot afford, Your Grace. The boy's resemblance to your betrothed makes him no less dangerous to your throne. Perhaps, Robert replies, but his hand moves protectively toward the basket where Jon sleeps. But Ned died to protect him. Ned, who never lied to me about anything else, who fought beside me through every battle of the rebellion. Should his sacrifice mean nothing? Jon Arryn speaks for the first time since entering the pavilion, his aged voice heavy with the wisdom of years spent navigating the treacherous waters of politics. Your Grace, there are alternatives to execution. The boy could be sent across the narrow sea, raised in exile where he poses no immediate threat, or perhaps to the Wall, when he comes of age, to serve the realm in perpetual celibacy. The Wall, Stannis muses, a fitting fate for bastard blood. Let him spend his life defending the realm from wildlings and worse things. At least his death would serve some purpose when it comes. But Robert shakes his head. 20 years from now, some ambitious lord would claim he escaped, that the true prince had returned to reclaim his birthright. Dead or alive, absent or present, he becomes a symbol for every malcontent who opposes my rule. Then what would you have us do? Tywin asks with barely concealed impatience. The child cannot remain here, cannot grow to manhood under your protection. Every day he draws breath is another day closer to rebellion. Quote, Robert stands and moves to the pavilion's entrance, pushing aside the silk flaps to stare out at the lights of Winterfell in the distance. The ancient castle broods against the northern sky, its grey walls stained with the blood of good men who died for oaths and loyalties. In its crypts, the Stark kings sleep their eternal sleep, while in its godswood, The heart tree weeps red sap for the violence it has witnessed. I have an idea, Robert says finally, turning back to face his council. Something that serves both necessity and justice. That honors Ned's sacrifice while protecting the realm. The men around the table lean forward, their faces showing curiosity mixed with wariness in the short time since his coronation. They have learned that their young king possesses a mind capable of both brilliance and ruthlessness. The boy stays at Winterfell, Robert continues, but not as a hidden bastard, and not as a royal ward. He becomes my hostage, held openly as surety for northern loyalty. Let the North know, but their future behavior determines his fate. Tywin's eyes narrow as he considers the implications. Interesting. A living reminder of the price of rebellion, yet one whose death would serve as ultimate punishment for future defiance. Exactly, Robert says, warming to his theme. The northern lords will think twice before plotting against my rule if they know their actions could doom Lyanna's son. And Jon will grow up knowing exactly what he is and what he represents. You would tell him? Stannis asks. Reveal his true parentage despite the risks. Robert nods grimly. I would have no more lies between us, no more secrets poisoning the realm. He will know that he is Rhaegar's son, and Lyanna's, that his blood carries both dragon fire and wolf loyalty. But he will also know that his life depends entirely on northern good behavior. Jon Arryn strokes his grey beard thoughtfully. A dangerous gamble, Your Grace. Knowledge of his heritage could make him more dangerous, not less. What if he decides that being a living symbol is preferable to being a dead martyr? Then I kill him, Robert says simply, publicly, dramatically, as an example to any who would follow his path. But until that day comes, he serves as both carrot and stick, a reason for the North to behave, and a reminder of what happens to those who defy kings. The silence that follows is broken only by the soft sounds of Jon's breathing and the distant murmur of soldiers settling into their camps. Outside, ravens carry word of the day's events to every corner of the Seven Kingdoms, spreading news of Ned Stark's death and the end of northern independence. There remains the question of Winterfell itself, Tywin observes. The castle requires a lord, and young Robb Stark is hardly suitable for such responsibility. His gaze falling once again on the sleeping infant, whose very existence has reshaped the political landscape. Catelyn Stark will serve as regent until Robb comes of age. She understands the stakes now, understands what defiance costs. She will keep the North in line better than any imposed lord. A grieving widow ruling in the name of a child, Stannis questions. That seems like a recipe for further rebellion. Perhaps, Robert allows. But she also understands that Jon Snow's life hangs in the balance of her decisions. Maternal instinct will keep her loyal even if political calculation might not. Tywin nods, slowly. Elegant, Your Grace. Turn the Starks' own honor against them. Make them complicit in maintaining their captivity. The North will police itself, rather than risk the boy's death. Catelyn Stark appears at the pavilion entrance, her face pale but composed, despite the tears that still stain her cheeks. She has changed from her bloodied gown into simple grey wool, and her auburn hair is braided in the northern fashion that marks her as a woman in mourning. Your Grace, she says quietly, her blue eyes fixed on the basket where Jon sleeps. I would speak with you about the child. Robert gestures for her to enter, noting how his advisors shift uncomfortably in the presence of the woman whose husband they helped to kill. Lady Stark, I was just discussing arrangements for your circumstances. Catelyn steps closer to the table, her gaze never leaving Jon's peaceful face. I know what you mean to do with him, Your Grace. I can see it in your eyes. in the way you look at him like a weapon to be wielded, rather than a child to be protected. And what would you have me do instead? Robert asks. Release him to grow up free and dangerous? Pretend that dragon blood poses no threat to the realm's peace? I would have you remember that he is innocent, Catelyn replies, her voice steady, despite the pain that underlies every word. Whatever crimes you lay at his father's feet, whatever threats you imagine in his future, today he is simply a baby who needs protection. Robert laughs bitterly. Protection? Like the protection Ned offered? Like the protection that cost him his life and plunged the North into civil war? Sometimes, Lady Stark protection becomes its own form of cruelty. Catelyn kneels beside the basket, her fingers gently tracing Jon's sleeping face. Then let me offer him different protection, Your Grace. Let me raise him alongside. As Ned intended, let him know love as well as duty, kindness as well as the weight of his heritage. The suggestion hangs in the air like incense, sweet and impossible. Robert studies the woman who might have been his queen, who now pleads for the life of her husband's killer's prize. And why would you do that? Robert asks. Why care for the child whose existence destroyed your family? Catelyn looks up at him with eyes that hold depths of sorrow and understanding. Because that is what Ned would have done. Because someone must remember that mercy is not weakness, that honor is not foolishness, that even in the darkest times we can choose to be better than our worst impulses. Tywin shifts impatiently. Your Grace, we should not be swayed by feminine sentiment. The boy's fate must be decided by political necessity, not maternal instinct. But Robert waves him silent, his attention focused entirely on Catelyn's face. You understand the terms, Lady Stark. You understand that his life depends on northern loyalty, that any hint of rebellion will doom him. I understand, Catelyn replies, and I will make sure the North understands as well. We will keep the peace, Your Grace, not out of fear or love for you, but out of love for an innocent child whose only crime was being born. Robert nods slowly. The boy remains at Winterfell in your care. You will raise him knowing his heritage, but also knowing his place. He will understand that he lives by my grace alone, and that his future depends entirely on northern good behavior. As the council disperses into the night, Robert remains alone with the sleeping child and the grieving mother who has promised to protect him. Outside, 20,000 men prepare for the march south, their work in the north complete. They leave behind a realm fundamentally changed, its ancient loyalties shattered and rebuilt according to the will of kings. Jon Snow stirs in his basket, his violet eyes opening to stare up at the canvas ceiling. For a moment, his gaze seems almost aware, as if he understands the weight of the destinies being shaped around him. Then he yawns, a tiny sound that humanizes him despite the royal blood that flows in his veins, and drifts back to sleep. Years will pass before he truly comprehends what he is, what he represents, what his very existence costs the realm. He will grow up in the shadow of Winterfell's towers, knowing himself to be both prince and prisoner, heir and hostage. He will learn that love and duty can coexist with fear and necessity, that even the most terrible circumstances can produce unexpected grace. And someday, when the songs are written and the stories told, men will wonder whether Robert Baratheon's mercy was wisdom or folly, whether Jon Snow's survival was a gift to the realm or a curse upon it. But that day lies years in the future, beyond the scope of immediate consequences. For now, there is only a sleeping child and the knowledge that the wheel of fate has turned once more, grinding old loyalties to dust while forging new ones in the fire of necessity. The dragon lives, but caged. The wolf is dead, but remembered. And, In the space between those truths, a new kind of song begins. Neither holy tragedy nor triumph, but something more complex and human. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like,